blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right. Welcome, CoCo Cruisers, to episode 47 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. This, of course, is actually our 48th episode, our 4-year anniversary episode, because we started with episode 0.
Wow.
Very exciting. Unlike many of our yearly end episodes, we actually still haven't quite got to CoCo Fest, but it's coming soon. Very exciting. We're going to have a good time. We're going to reminisce a little bit, give you the normal standard broadcast. So here we are, episode 47. We've never missed a month. Of course, I'm John Linville. Hello. Welcome. Neil Blanchard, are you there? Hello.
I am here. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Neil.
Hello.
Mike Rowan, are you there? Hello.
I am here, and I'm looking so forward to CoCo Fest.
Oh, very good, very good. And we have Mr. Ron Klein. Hello, Ron.
Hey, everybody.
So, as I say, CoCo Fest is almost here. Won't be too long. Got to get through another short week. And it's going to be a short week for me because I'm taking the day off to watch a movie on Friday. You can guess which one. But soon CoCo Fest will be here. Very exciting. Everyone's going to CoCo Fest, right?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's good.
Of course, CoCo Fest is just about here. That means Tandy Assembly is what now? 5 months away? Something like that?
Yeah, frightening.
So that'll be another good reason to travel out to the Midwest and celebrate some Tandy goodness. So who's got a project rolling underway, something that's going to pop at CoCo Fest? Anything?
Well, I do. I got a few projects going, like usual, right to the last minute. Got to get stuff ready for CoCo Fest. Can't believe it's like 15 days away as of this recording.
Yeah.
Gonna have a new game cartridge. Night Lore is going to be released, and it's going to be debuting at CoCo Fest.
Awesome.
Very exciting. And what about you, Ron? You got something brewing for CoCo Fest? I think we're going to talk about it here in a couple of minutes, what you have been doing. Anything else?
Yeah, I just released the latest Cocoa Pie CoCo Fest 2019 edition that just hit some sites for download, complete with a couple bugs, just a couple minor ones. Got those already taken care of. Yeah, I got to hire some better QC people, including myself. But anyway, yeah, I'll have it at the show. Yeah, I'll have it set up at a table. If people want to bring an SD card and things like that, I'd be happy to make a copy for them. So that's my project right now.
Very good. Michael, what do you got going? Any you got your best of collection? Anything else?
Nope, that's really it. The best of Myro CD plus the CoCo Fest adventure game.
Very exciting. I hope you've got enough to cover. I was listening to episode 30 of Trash Talk, and they had a listener question about their commercials, and they plugged your best of collection coming. So I hope you're prepared to get some orders from that side of the community as well. What have I been up to? Well, mostly I've just been finishing up with my production run for Warfall Master Edition, and I had some room in the box, and so I made a few extra copies of Follow CoCo and Xmas Rush. I had some requests for each of those. So that's pretty cool stuff. Follow CoCo is my Simon clone. Xmas Rush is my original game where you fight the evil snowman or avoid the evil snowman to rescue the Christmas tree.
That's a great game.
It's good you're
Pretty
doing
exciting.
some more of those. Yeah.
Pretty exciting, yeah. I need to do some new projects, but I think I'm going to try to get started. New projects and maybe revisiting some old projects after CoCo Fest. I always say, too, I'm going to work on something that's not CoCo, but we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll finally get to one of my console games or something like that. Anybody got any acquisitions lately?
Yeah, I picked up a what is it, a modem? I'm not even sure it's an acoustic modem with a 25-pin RS-232 on it. It's like one of the first ones that Radio Shack came out with.
Awesome. Neil, you got any interesting?
Well, yeah. Actually, there's been something pretty interesting today, actually. The day of this recording. The Brantford Computer Museum is shutting down, or has shut down, and they're giving all their stuff away. So I went there first thing this morning, and I just loaded as much of my vehicle as I can get in there.
That's awesome.
It was quite...
I hope you took your sharp elbows.
Quite an adventure. Well, the nice thing is, when I got there in the morning, there's just one other person there.
Wow. That was such a great museum, too. It was sad to see it go, but
yeah.
Good that they're just giving everything away. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good that it's not going in the garbage.
That's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
Even if they were selling it, it would be, at least somebody would get it, hopefully.
Yeah.
But, yeah, very cool. And if anybody beat Neil there and was hoarding stuff, feel free to reach out to me with your CoCo list and let me know. Ron, how about you? Any acquisitions lately?
Actually, no. I've been saving some funds for CoCo Fest, believe it or not. Probably for the auction, and I'm sure there's going to be some things for sale, so I want to keep that available, especially with it being so close now.
Cool, yeah, I understand that. Just checking my eBay history here. Let's see, recently I did pick up a copy of Zone Runner. I would have thought I'd had it somewhere in my pile already, but I couldn't seem to locate it, so I went ahead and bought another one. It seems complete. It's not in shrink wrap, but at least it's, gives you that feeling of the 80s or whatever.
Isn't that the game that's for OS 9, but also for the Color Computer 3?
Yeah,
either or.
Printed on the cover, it says for OS 9, operating system 9, OS 9, and then it says or Color Computer 3.
That's awesome.
A little weird. Also, somebody had a little baggie with the replacement belts for the CCR 82 cassette recorder.
Oh, that's cool.
I have a couple of those laying around. I thought, well, that'd be worth having. I did replace the belts on one before with just I bought a random collection of little rubber belts and matched them as best I could. So that's cool. I was looking around eBay and I found somebody selling a printed circuit board, a bare circuit board for a 6809 circuit. It's oh God, what's the guy's name?
Is that Grant Searle's board, or is it
Grant? Yeah, Grant Searle. Yeah, Grant Searle. I have to source the parts and build it myself, but it might be fun to play with. And it's got a little expansion connector on one side. We'll see how that goes. Shipping to me from Bulgaria, so God knows when they'll get here. Well, that's probably a good way to start off our 4th year anniversary show. Woohoo, 4 years.
Yeah.
We thought we'd ever get here. So why don't we go ahead and take a little break, and then we'll be back with a more formal set of announcements.
It's not too late to attend North America's largest gathering of color computer devotees. There's only one CoCo Fest, and you don't want to miss it. CoCo Fest is May 4th and 5th at the Heron Point Convention Center in Lombard, Illinois.
All right, what do you know? We took a little break and heard a knock on the door. We went to open it, and we had a friend of the show come by, heard we were having our anniversary show, and wanted to wish us congratulations on our 4th year. We've had this gentleman, said loosely, on the show at least once before, but he's always welcome to come back, especially when he wants to tell us about new products and new things coming to CoCo Fest. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Marlette. Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, John. And everyone
Awesome.
else here. It's really, really hard to believe that it's been 4 years.
it's one of those things you just kind of keep doing it and putting one foot in front of the other. And we've had a few months where it's been a little bit hard to come together on the show, just because of other events in life or whatever, or just because, they're not feeling very creative that month. But come back together and do the best we can and try to put on something that we think people will enjoy. And I think so far we've done it, although, maybe it's time to this year to think about, well, should we keep doing this or should we not? But I think for now we're all still on the keep going side. So at least through CoCo Fest, right?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I don't miss an episode. Look forward to it every month. I don't know how you guys can top yourselves, but you do. You hit it out of the park, as far as I'm concerned. It's doing really, really good. I look forward to it. So congratulations to your accomplishments. The show's grown. It's changed. It's awesome. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that feel that way.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We do have download numbers that support that at least a few people are happy to see us each month. So that's good.
Very nice.
All right, so Mark, CoCo Fest is coming. It's practically here now.
Yeah.
I assume usually you like to hit us with at least something new for CoCo Fest. And I know from our back channel communications that you've been hard at work for several months now on probably more than one thing. And so it's that time. What do you want to share with us this month?
You're right. I've been not on social media very much. Just kind of got my head down, plowing through things. And anyone that's ever done any design work knows it never goes right. So there's always problems that you don't see, whatever. But things are going pretty good. So I appreciate the little time here that we can go over some of these things that people that won't get to go to CoCo Fest to be able to see, but actually know what I'm currently working on, what I plan on releasing. It's been a lot of fun.
We definitely want to get your word in here on things. For whatever reason, you're not a maven of social media or whatever, so it's easier to overlook you sometimes, and especially for those who are not as experienced with the community and who's doing what or whatever. We'd like to see you get some exposure so that your products are not overlooked, because I do find a lot of times your products are every bit as good, quite often a bit better than the alternative products, but then because they're kind of in the right place or whatever, they get talked about by a lot of people who are new to the community and don't know where else to look. We definitely want you to get your word in here so that people that are listening to us have a broader awareness of what you're doing.
Again, I appreciate the time, and it's not that I don't visit the social media. I have the pulse. I see what's going on. I see what people are asking for, what they're liking, but kind of take that with a grain of salt. And like a lot of people, they just do what they're going to do anyway. And that's kind of like how Cloud9 was formed, was I would design something and then I would say, you know what, I bet someone else would like this product. So then I would bring it forward, and that's how I started. And you all know I've been doing this for a long time. I think it was 1994 is when I started. In 1997, I released the first SIM card upgrade for the Color Computer 3. 2014, I released the Triad, which was the first ever 512K SRAM upgrade for the CoCo 3, which greatly reduced the internal heat generated by the DRAMs and the power supply inside the color computer. Last year at the CoCo Fest, I had a prototype of a 2 meg board that I had actually running and working. There were some aspects of it that I didn't care for and I didn't like. So I worked on the development of that. It really solidified December, January of this year, and I brought the product forward. And I'm proud to announce that I have a Triad Plus that's going to be available. It's a 512K to 2048K memory upgrade, SRAM. It's just basically it's the same footprint as the Triad, except that it has 4 times the memory on it, of course. Not much different than the Boomerang. I draw less power. With that comes the Protector Plus /MMU. The Protector Plus MMU runs DK Remix and all the Sierra games unpatched with no issues.
Unpatched with no issues? How is that possible?
I like to say at Cloud9, we know memory. It's the little details that allow you to run these things unpatched. They're 4-layer cards. I think they're the best products I've made to date as far as how they look. I'm very impressed. Happy with that. So we're in the production of those right now. So we're really cranking those things out. A couple of the other items, so I'm going to go down a list here. I just have a list. I've done a lot of work on keyboard products and keyboard interface type. The PS2 adapter has changed a little bit on the interface. It used to have a ribbon cable that plugged in to a wire field, basically header, and then that would plug into the CoCo motherboard or the CoCo 2 or CoCo 1. It already had a header on it, so that ribbon cable then would plug directly into it. So that worked fine in that instance. I actually produced a longer FFC, which is a flat flexible cable. It's actually not like the Mylar that's in the CoCo. It actually has real metal in it. So I produced a longer one of those, which allows you to mount a keyboard interface under the existing keyboard and then plug in like the Mylar does. So there's 2 Mylar connectors on the board. They're little tiny boards that plug into the motherboard connection that allow the flat flexibles to then plug into either existing keyboard cable or an external like PS2 or another product, which I'll get to later on here, to plug in and work in parallel. So both devices can be active at the same time. I've produced that for the color computer and the Tano. I have a Dragon 64 sitting here that I never turn on. I never do anything with it. It just kind of sits here. So I started to look at it. Well, of course, anyone that does the Tano knows that the keyboard map's not totally different, but greatly different. I changed the PS2 firmware now to support a CoCo 1 and 2 key map, a CoCo 3 keyboard map, the Tano Dragon, and Ron suggested that I look into MC10 support as well. So these key maps are all capable of being loaded. Previously, in all the other versions that I had, you could only have one key map in the firmware of the microcontroller. Now you're allowed to have multiple ones in there, and you can select which key map that you want. So if you wanted to take your adapter out of one application and move it over to another, all you do is run a different setup, tell the controller what your target computer is, and you're up and running.
Wow.
Been
That's
a
slick.
lot. Yeah, a lot of work into that. But again, it's a lot of the same stuff, and I don't know if people really know. I have an interrupt-driven circular ring buffer in that device. Each function key from F3 to F12 has a 50-byte programmable macro key that's stored, and I'm offering a free firmware upgrade to the current revision. All the customer has to do is send the device in and pay the shipping costs. There's no charge to the firmware update. Anyone with a Rev C board, that's been a lot of work and a lot of testing. Boise and Tormod were essential in some of the testing of that because I wanted to test the keyboard out, but yet some of the functions had never been done on the Tano before. That was a lot of fun. Tano's cool. So there's going to be some more Tano support coming out of Cloud 9. I'm going to be adding the Tano drive wire cable. So that has a 6551 in it, and it has a 7-pin DIN. So I'll be adding that to our product line as well.
Oh, very cool.
Nice.
I know I tried to run it at 115 too, and it wouldn't work. So I hooked up the scope to it, and you can see why it doesn't work. It looks terrible slew rates on the RS-232 driver, so that's going to be another product I'm going to make a little top hat board to allow the Tano to run at 115 too. My Tano Dragon, I don't know if this is true to everyone else, didn't have a video cable. I produced a pretty professional looking, we call it Chinese finger, coaxial audio video cable. So it comes out the 5-pin DIN out the back with an audio video composite feed. So that's another product that I'll have. Worked with Mike in Boise on a 2048K Tandy badge, which we got approval through the Tandy Corporation of the UK. They approved that item for resale with their name on it. And those will be included in the pricing structure of the 512K and the Protector MMU, that badge will be included now with that package. I like to have a total package. Go to one source, you can get the memory boards, you can get your badge, you can get everything, and the badge looks fantastic. I mean, it's beautiful.
Looks like Tandy made it, yeah.
It's unbelievable. So yeah, so I have those as well. I'm now, and I've been doing this for a long time, but now I'm now packaging the 512K case badge with every triad I sell. I was packaging it with every system that I sell here, which I still sell a lot of systems out of here. So every one of those would have the 512K badge on it. Now every triad that I sell, which I wasn't going to produce the triad, but last year at Tandy Assembly, I came there with a bunch of boards just because I'd already sold out. I get a lot of requests of people that really don't want or need the extra memory. So they're happy with just having a 512K upgrade. I kept it in the product line here.
Well, that's cool. There's a lot of debate over how useful it is to have 2 meg anyway. And then, there is a handful of programs that can use it. So some of those even don't totally need it, but use it to some advantage or whatever. But yeah, it's good to be able to handle the 512K, especially for those that don't want to bother with it, wondering if stuff's going to work in 2 meg.
Yeah, and the board from a cost standpoint costs a little bit more for the added memory, but you are buying then the DAT board. That's another piece of hardware that you got to supply the extra 2 bits to the memory card that you just don't need. Some people just don't want to have that extra cost, so hey, it's all right with me. As long as you're running a CoCo, I don't care.
That's it.
That's it. Run a CoCo.
Exactly.
Or a Dragon.
Yeah, or Dragon now. I mean, they're sitting side by side, actually right now, right next to me here. So I just want to say again, kudos to Tormod and Boise for helping out on some of the stuff that we did on that Dragon that weekend. And I asked Tormod, has anyone ever done this before? And he said, obviously not. So we were creating on the fly.
We should definitely include the Dragon folks and integrate them more with the rest of the community.
Yep.
It's silly for us to have 2 different communities. We're all basically doing the same stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, but it's just slightly different.
If we love the MC10, we can find space in our hearts to love the Dragon for sure.
Absolutely.
I got to go dig. Ron, he said, hey, ever consider the MC10? I was like, I have one. I just got to dig it out of my collection. So I'll be getting that out and taking a peek at that for the interfaces. And when I talk PS2 right now, the keyboards in general, that whole product line I've spent a ton of time in research and development on different platforms. I probably have 6 or 7 folders in my repository of different devices, Bluetooth, USB. They're working. Certain aspects of them. Some of them I like, some of them I don't like. Don't like the chipset. I don't like features of them. When you're looking from the outside in, sales do a really good job on making their devices look fantastic. But when the rubber hits the road, a lot of this stuff doesn't fly. I mean, it's just amazing. Really eye-opening. I mean, I spent months working with apps engineers and hey, you say your product does this. Why isn't it performing? And you go back and forth, and it's just very, very time-consuming. In the end, basically, in the story is, we don't support that. Not that it can't do it. We're just not going to tell you how to do it. You're on your own. Anyone that's done any development in USB or Bluetooth stacks, it's staggering. It's a full-time job, and then some. You look for the sweet spot. Yeah, you got to do some development, but yet it does what it says it's going to do. So I found that sweet spot. I probably have 6 development kits of various ones where they said it would work, and then in the end it doesn't work. Say I'm not going to do USB. I don't want to have another cable like the PS2 running out of the CoCo. But I do have a Bluetooth interface currently working on the color computer. It's not fully functioning. PS2 versus Bluetooth, the packets, USB, the structure's different, but I'm receiving keys. It's just a front end change of my driver to accept a PS2 packet versus basically a Bluetooth or USB packet. So that's coming down the pipe. Would I like to have it done? Yes. I swear in February I got nothing done but going in circles. That's behind me, I hope. So moving forward on those products. Another one that I'm currently working on, it's just kind of fun. The big rave, and everybody wants a real-time clock for some reason. So it seems to be the latest rave or whatever. Yeah, it's like they're going crazy over it. We've always had, Cloud9, we've always had real-time clocks on, going all the way back to TC3, which I believe I released in 1997. So Super ID had them on there. They were the Dallas products, the DS1315, which is a phantom real-time clock. That's the name of this device, so the device is called Phantom. What's interesting about this device is it doesn't use the Dallas products because, honestly, paying $20 for a real-time clock today seems silly. So I'm using a I2C real-time clock that is galactically less expensive. I marry it to a real microcontroller, and I'm emulating the DS1216 or the 1315 in the microcontroller using the I2C real-time clock. So what that gives you is the ability of all the older software that worked on the DS1315 or the 1216 platform to work. There's no changes. It just runs. Backwards compatibility. It's great to come out with new products, but if there's nothing written for it, you hit a wall. You develop the hardware, but yet there's no software for it. So this allows.
That's the bane of the CoCo these days is people checking out one piece of hardware after another, but no software for any of it.
Yep. And I feel for them because it's real, but having the ability to emulate and using the legacy products to be able to use your new device is great. So along with that, so I have this powerhouse. I mean, these things are cheap, but they have a lot of power in them. And I'm on the Atmel AVR platform. What I've added also is support for the DriveWire time and date function is also supported through the device. So if you want to talk DriveWire to it, talk DriveWire to it. If you want to talk the Dallas Phantom format, talk that way to it. I've also added, if anyone's familiar with DriveWire, the name pipes. So as a developer, we'll create, John, a high score. There's E squared. I have about 640 bytes of E squared that I can use in the actual AVR and the real-time clock that's just there for free. So I figured, what the heck? Add a name pipe that will support high scores.
Just quickly, the term is named objects.
Named objects? Okay.
Yep.
I'm kind of a pipe guy from OS 9.
OS 9, yeah.
Yep, for OS 9. So anyway, so a named object for the high scored or a generic storage function. So that device will support that as well. Is it totally solid yet? No. We're kind of in development. How's it going to work? It will do that. So very easily, your ROM pack, for instance, John, doesn't have to have that storage. You'll be able to store these scores out in this area.
Cool.
That's kind of fun. I mean, that's a real small project, but it's just kind of fun. The next project is a lot bigger. I mean, it started out as a small project, and again, everybody wants serial ports. So it's kind of like, well, why not? I'll make a serial port too. Why not?
It gets soggy in milk.
But these are a little different. So this product's called HotLink. Currently, it has 4 serial ports. 3 are of the normal serial. The other one's a Wi-Fi interface on the WizNet platform. 2 of the serial channels are high-speed USB capable of 3 megabaud, the FTDI interfaces. So you'll have a USB cable plugged directly into this. Ed has one that's currently like that right now that I believe plugs into the Mini Mega cartridge that plugs off to the side that he's working on. It's like that, but much different. And one of the serial ports is a legacy DTE with full hardware handshaking along with the ring indicator. It's capable of 1 megabaud. You can kind of look at this and say, it's kind of crazy, the CoCo and the 6551. You can do 115.2 on the 6551. You can play around and you can get it to go faster if you play some more games with the crystal and so forth. But you can see that these new ports are way beyond that. All the serial ports are being managed by an X Mega, 32 megahertz microcontroller. What this brings into, I think this one has 5 or 7 UARTs. I think I have 8 channels of DMA. I can do serial transfer that's almost codeless in the main loop once the DMA is all set up.
Wow.
At these speeds. The X Mega is capable of going faster than 3 megabaud even. So it's an amazing platform. I've spent a lot of time in this platform, so I understand the chipsets really well. What this device is also going to bring is I'm going to emulate the 6551. So even though it's a 16550 or whatever UART interface in the actual device, the FTDI, whatever, having huge buffers, I'm going to still emulate the 6551 much like I did in the Phantom and the DS1315, allowing the older devices to run right out of the box with this device.
Great. Yeah, that's fantastic. It's like you said, it's a software compatibility.
Yep. What's nice about it is Boise and I have talked about how to implement these higher baud rates. So we have a method that we're going to flip into that will allow you to go up and beyond the 115.2 all the way up to the 3 megabaud baud rate table. And of course, with the legacy terminal software programs, they're not going to be able to, they have no idea what that is. But, with in addition to, Supercom or something like that, where you can modify the source and recompile it, you'll have access to these higher speed baud rates. And everything's handshook. Again, there's circular buffers. I can define however large or small I want the transmit and receive. I can program the thresholds for the interrupts, everything on this thing. This is going to be a powerhouse serial card.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
What's cool about this, and I haven't done it yet because I'm in the layout of it right now, is it will fit in a super pack. All of this is going to fit in the super pack that you guys have designed up. That's my goal. It might be an 8-layer card because the last pin count was over 325 pins of devices.
Oh.
A lot going on. It's going to be dense. Fine pitch and very dense. What else we got? Cool Touch. There's no ground in the motherboard keyboard connector. And I needed a ground to do what I wanted to do. So I hemmed and hawed basically on how can I go about doing this. And finally I just said, screw it. I'm adding a 4-pin power connector, which will give me power, ground, and 2 other pins, which will allow me to communicate, which is the basis of Cloud9's Gen 3 product line. Devices talk to each other on an internal bus. This product has taken a massive scope change. No longer passive, it's an active device. It has a communications channel that, for instance, will talk to my SD card, which is like a CoCo SDC, but way more feature-rich. For instance, at boot time, you hold down a certain key on the communications channel. It's talking to the SD card, and it says, hey, the keyboard's requesting this boot ROM. On my SD card, it has a virtual RAM emulator, and it just loads the RAM or the ROM off the SD card, and in real time, it just loads this stuff up while the computer is turning on. I mean, these processors are so fast, I'm loading memory while the CoCo's booting and presenting the ROM to the color computer. It's taken a major redesign, so I didn't bring that forward right now. So, I mean, that's huge, what's going on in there. And I'm also implementing Bluetooth. As an option, you'll be able to turn on the Bluetooth module and have a wireless keyboard interface in the Cool Touch series.
Nice.
The Super Spectro is another one that's taken a major redesign. I'm actually remapping everything, aligning the FPGA pins to the high-speed memory that's on board. I'm splitting the analog and digital sections on the layout. I have at least a month on each one of those projects to bring those forward. One of the last items, and I really haven't talked about this device much at all. I call it a Super SD right now. I don't know if the name's going to change, but some of the features that are on that board from a design requirement, it's going to have an SD card interface. Currently, the SPI bus is running at 24 megahertz. The current CoCo SDC is either running at 2.5 or 5 megahertz. So you have a significant, my benchmarks that I've been doing is I've been loading a meg in about 700 milliseconds off the host.
Wow.
So these things are smoking fast. With that, I've also played around. I've had SATA drives hooked up. They are really fast. So amazing transfer rates. Also have a dual MP3 sound chips on there, VLSI 1053s, which has,
Wow.
I mean, they're massive. They're amazing. You can actually load plugins. So if you want an equalizer, you just load a plugin off the SD card, load it right in there. If you want an AUG recorder, they have a plugin available for that. You just load it off the SD right into the chip off the SPI. Amazing device. You can control all your sample rates, carries the MIDI in and out features. So I threw a 32 meg DRAM chip on that board so that sound files can be loaded, or a game or whatever. It doesn't really matter whether you're loading something off the SD card or if it's going into DRAM. As far as the XMega is concerned, it just plays the file. You just tell it start and finish, it plays the sound. So interrupt-driven support, so you could reload all your sound files into memory and just point to it and play. And it'd be, doing all your sounds in real time. Real-time clock. We're going to have the communications bus because it's a Gen 3 device. Programmable timer with ERC routing. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, Mark, it's great to hear what you've been up to. Great to hear you've got plans continuing at least through Tandy Assembly.
Oh, yeah.
Very exciting stuff. It's good to know there is there's more than one person in the CoCo community doing some cool hardware. So good to give you a little chance to pull back the curtain and give people a chance to look at something different and new. No promises on how many rupees you're going to have, but maybe you'll have a few more. Mark, again, thank you for sharing your roadmap with us. Very exciting stuff. Definitely looking forward to seeing you with all the other guys in a couple of weeks.
Stop by, see us at the booth. Make
Mark
the trek.
will be there wearing his funny glasses.
That's right. Make the trek.
Make the trek. All right. Well, why don't we draw this to a little close? Come back with another part of the show.
Hi, CoCo Cruisers. This is Mike Rowan. If you've enjoyed the parody commercials you've heard on the CoCo Crew podcast, you'll be happy to hear that my favorites are now available for your enjoyment on my new CD, The Best of Myro, Favorites from the CoCo Crew podcast. You get 24 tracks of parody audio from the CoCo Crew podcast. Favorites like Shock Trooper, Retro Fresh, Cocoa House Rock, Those Were the Days, and more. And that's not all. Included on the CD is my own adventure game, CoCo Fest Adventure. Explore the Fairfield Inn and the Heron Point Convention Center in Lombard, Illinois. Talk with CoCo Fest vendors. Can you safely cross the 6-lane highway? Can you find the room key? Will you solve the mystery of the heron? It's the next best thing to being at CoCo Fest. The best of Myro is just $20 plus shipping. That's 24 tracks of audio plus the CoCo Fest adventure game. All for one low price on a professionally manufactured CD. To get yours, just send your name and shipping address to orders@borncoco.com. That's orders, ORDERS, at borncoco, BORNCOCO.com. Or save the shipping cost and purchase your CD in person at CoCo Fest 2019. Hope to see you there.
All right. Now we're back with some announcements. You are, of course, listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. We are available on Twitter as at CoCo Crew Podcast, all one word. We are also available with a page on Facebook, and there it's the space CoCo space Crew space podcast. Spaces is not the word space. So 4 words. Anyway, if you're on the Book of Face, well, first, if prone to sending tweets, feel free to tweet at us. And if you're on the Book of Faces, come and check us out on our Facebook group. We are an active podcast, at least when I'm making this show, we are. So we're available on through iTunes and Google Play for normal downloading. And, of course, we're available for streaming on Stitcher and on TuneIn. TuneIn, of course, is the service used by Alexa and the other smart speakers. So, Alexa, play CoCo Crew Podcast. There. That'll work for you. Let's see. We have started converting our shows over to sort of a provisional video format. Mostly just our show notes intermixed with a bouncing wave of our voices. Anyway, so we are available on YouTube. And those are supposed to be being made available through the CoCo TV channel on Roku. I think we might be an episode behind there. Need to kick Mr. Taylor and see if he can get us up to date. We are a member of the Throwback Network. This is a collection of retro-themed podcasts. If you're done listening to all the episodes of the CoCo Crew and looking for other retro-themed podcasts, we recommend you check out the Throwback Network. We are a member of the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. This is a collection of retro-themed podcasts focused on technology and retro video gaming. Audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. If you have a need to host audio on the internet, we recommend you check out Cyber Ears, where you will get your audio on your terms. If you would like to reach out to any of the hosts of the CoCo Crew, you can reach us all together via email to one of 3 email addresses. We have a show, SHOW, at CoCoCrew.org. That's COCOCREW.org. Also podcast, PODCAST, at CoCoCrew.org. Or feedback, FED, there's 2 E's, FEEDBACK, at CoCoCrew.org. And if you want to reach one of the hosts individually, then we do have separate email addresses set up for each of us. So I'm available as John, JOHN, at CoCoCrew.org. Neil is Neil, NEIL, at CoCoCrew.org. Mike is Mike, MIKE, at CoCoCrew.org. Boise is Boise, BOISY, at CoCoCrew.org. And, of course, Ron, the hardest spelling of all, RON, at CoCoCrew.org. That is our standard announcements. We've got some announcements that were made with respect to the coming CoCo Fest. We wanted to highlight them rather than just cover them in the news section. So we have an announcement of a release of Pi DriveWire version 0.5 from Michael R. Furman, or also known as Mikey. This, of course, is the new server implemented with the Python language for DriveWire, accumulating most of the features of the old DriveWire 4 server written in Java, maybe a few of its own. Among others, it supports the MC protocol, which is somewhat similar to DriveWire, but used with the MCX Basic, with the MCX 128 extension on the MC10. A lot of people have had some compatibility problems with the old Java-based DriveWire, and we're hoping that people will see fewer problems with the Python-based DriveWire that Mikey's producing, and if nothing else, Mikey's doing it actively. So if you do have problems with it, reach out to Mikey and see if you can get them fixed. Another release coming up for CoCo Fest from Mr. Ron Klein. Ron, do you want to cover your Cocoa Pie 3 announcement?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'll make this real quick. So the latest version of the Cocoa Pie 3 distribution for the Raspberry Pi was just released. It was uploaded to some mirrors. I added one. Neil was gracious enough to have some hosting space and bandwidth, so we got that posted up there. Some updated documentation. I'm still adding to the documentation. There's quite a few new features in here. I don't want to cover it now on the podcast, but I will be at the show. I will be answering questions, helping folks with it, copying SD cards if they want. Kind of in tying with Mikey's release of Pi DriveWire. That is now the default DriveWire daemon on the Cocoa Pi. The original DriveWire Java client is there, but also the daemon, but also the Pi DriveWire, and it works very, very well. Very lightweight, really made for the Raspberry Pi. Like John had mentioned too, with the EMC protocol, if you have a real MC10, you can host files very easily to it. So hopefully we'll see some interest in that. And again, if you have any questions or just want to see a demo of it, please stop by my table at CoCo Fest. Thanks.
Cool, very good. One last kind of event announcement. Not entirely new. We had this in the past, the Asimov Awards, which were awarded for programs written in the year before Given CoCo Fest. I think that's what they always were, certainly what they are now. We haven't had them in a few years. I think it kind of slipped and people weren't participating as much or whatever. But they're back this year. At this point, you have about 2 more weeks left to write a program before CoCo Fest to qualify for this year's Asimov Awards. It's a fun way to participate, get your name out in the community or whatever. So go ahead and check it out. Asimov Awards, sponsored by Diego Brizo. All right, moving on to our Heat Space events that we think our listeners may have some interest in. For those of you mostly in the northeast part of the United States or close by locations in Canada, coming up in May 3rd to 5th, 2019, we have VCF East, which will be held in Wall, New Jersey, at the InfoAge Science Center. This is a nice event, a lot of old computers, a little bit more bigger iron, mini computers and stuff than some other events. Held at a historical site there, which was associated with the early radio with Marconi. Anyway, so again, that's the InfoAge Science Center in Wall, New Jersey, VCF East. Highly recommended. Recommended except if you're a CoCo person, the weekend, the May 3rd through 5th, May 4th through 5th, 2019, of course, is CoCo Fest 2019. If you are a CoCo person in good standing, you ought to be doing everything you can to get to CoCo Fest, held in Lombard, Illinois, at Heron Point. Enjoy your other CoCo folks, meet some new people, exchange ideas, exchange CoCos, and above all, touch the Heron. Very exciting. I hope to meet all of you. Hope we get a ton of people in there. Hope we blow the doors off the place. So again, that's May 4th through 5th of 2019.
Make the trek. This is the last episode before CoCo Fest.
This is it.
By the time you're hearing this, it's just a few days away. So let's make it.
Yep. Hopefully we're riding along with a few of you as you listen to the podcast on your extended drive to the Chicagoland. All right, coming up after that, June 1st, 2019, the 5th Encontro Club Colorio, which, again, I'm sure I'm murdering the Brazilian Portuguese there. Taking my best shot at it. Give me a break. Anyway, if you're in Brazil or otherwise near Rio de Janeiro, highly recommend you figure out how to get there and join the Daniel, Luciano, Filippo, and everyone else planning to be down there. Very exciting stuff. Okay, coming up July 12th through 14th of 2019, we have in the Atlanta area, Southern Fried Gaming Expo. The Southern Fried Gaming Expo features more than 250 arcade, pinball, and console machines, tabletop, RPG, wrestling, music tournaments, a vendor expo, exciting programs and guest speakers, film festival, and so much more. Game all weekend at #SFGE2019. Moving on, let's see. Just the weekend after that, July 15th, the week after that, July 15th through 21st, we're talking about Kansas Fest, summer camp for Apple II nerds. This, of course, will be held at Rockhurst University in Kansas City, Missouri. the overnight event for most of a week. Go and hang out with your other retro folks, and definitely their Apple II folks, but, they're a good bunch of guys, so not all guys even. A few of the female persuasion there as well. So go and check it out. It's a fun event. Good way to spend some time in the summer.
Every time you mention the K-Fest, I can't get that parody they made out of my mind, That K-Fest gonna funk you up.
Oh, yeah. The Uptown Funk, yeah.
The Uptown Funk, yeah.
Very funny. So coming up August 3rd through 4th, we have VCF, that's Vintage Computing Federation Festival West, being held at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California. This is pretty much in the heart of Silicon Valley. If you want to go west and get your nerd on, check out some old computers. I'm sure it'll be a big event. Neil, you still planning to go there?
Yes, I am. Trying to make it happen.
Travel to California, meet Neil. How much better could it be? Very exciting stuff. September 14th and 15th of 2019, back in the Chicago area, VCF Midwest 14. Dates are locked in. New location to be announced soon. So, again, not at Elk Grove Village this year, but we still don't know where. Probably still plenty of time to find out where it is and make a reservation. It's a good event, free to the public. Lots of old computers, especially 8-bit home computers. It's held in conjunction with the Fall Commodore Expo. Heavy Commodore presence, but, again, it's not that much worse than the Apple folks. So, nice bunch of guys, so highly recommended. But not as highly recommended as September 28th to 29th of 2019. We, of course, have Tandy Assembly.
Woo!
It's a great event. The organizers are some of the finest fellows in the hobby. This is your Tandy event that's not CoCo Fest. Particularly if you're a Z80 or a Tandy fellow, it's probably your biggest event of the year. If you're a Model 1000, a Tandy 1000 kind of guy, or a Model 100 kind of guy, it's probably pretty much your only event of the year. So I guess you'll still be welcome at the VCF events. But anyway, definitely a cool event held in Springfield, Ohio. Anything you'd like to say, Mike?
Eat it, Roosters.
Eat it, Roosters. All right.
Let's not forget the donuts. Not forget those donuts.
Oh, yeah. That donut shop around the corner is awesome.
Oh, man.
We may have to get them to be a sponsor of the show. In fact, I may talk to them about that.
Those donuts are dynamite.
Trying to figure out where to overnight on my way to CoCo Fest, and maybe I'll have to stop in Springfield. One last event, October 18th through 20th of 2019. We have the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. This is probably the biggest retro gaming event in the United States, held at the Oregon Convention Center in Portland, Oregon. Tickets to PRGE are now on sale. As in previous years, all ticketing fees are built into the online price. What you see is what you pay. PRG is expanding in 2019, adding an additional 30,000 square feet of convention space, bringing the total footage of the expo to 150,000 square feet. Goodness, I thought it was already big.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a pretty cool event. It is in the Pacific Northwest, there in Portland. Portland's not a bad place if you've ever been there. Or if you've never been there, then go and check it out. Certainly looks like a lot of good retro gaming stuff there. Probably a great place to pick up homebrew console games and that sort of thing. All right, so again, highly recommended, although I've never actually been myself. All right, that's our list of announcements. So why don't we take another short break, and then we'll be back with some news.
Since 1994, Cloud9 has made cool stuff for your color computer. Now Cloud9 is proud to announce the 2MB Triad Plus memory expansion board. The Triad Plus works in two ways. Purchase just the Triad Plus board to expand your Color Computer 3 from 128K to 512K of RAM. Or add the new Protector Plus MMU to access the full 2 megabytes of static RAM aboard the Triad Plus. And the Protector Plus MMU utilizes full buffering to protect your CPU. Unlike previous 2 megabyte memory expansions for the CoCo 3, The Triad Plus operates seamlessly without the need for special patches, configuration, or workarounds. Games like Donkey Kong Remix and Sierra Adventure games simply work without hassle. And the Triad Plus will reduce your CoCo's power consumption and heat generation. The Triad Plus and Protector Plus MMU, only from the innovative engineering of Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time for some news.
All right, our first news item this month is from Brendan Donahue. It's a demonstration of BBC Microbit connected to serial port of the TRS-80 Tandy Color Computer 2. This is really cool. He's working on a paper for Boise's Call for Papers, which should be available at CoCo Fest. And what he's done is he's programmed a BBC Microbit, it's a little single board computer. In the video, he's using the 3-axis accelerometers on the board, and when he moves the board around, it actually moves a cursor around on the CoCo screen, which is really cool. He's doing that through a serial link between the Microbit and his color computer. He also gives a demo where he sends text from the CoCo to the Microbit, and it will turn it into speech. Yeah, that's totally awesome. Well done, Brendan. I'm looking forward to seeing more about this at CoCo Fest.
Oh, very cool. It's good to see people connecting retro stuff to each other.
Yeah.
Or new stuff to retro, either way.
All right, our next one is from Jim Gary. Manic Miner for Retro Challenge. Another great one here from Jim Gary. It's a ladder and platform game for the MC10. It's based on a game that was written for the Sinclair Spectrum. I guess he submitted this for Retro Challenge this year, and it looks really nice. There's moving obstacles.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, there's moving obstacles when you're moving around from the ladders. I guess the object is to go through and collect gold. There are ladders and platforms that you have to jump out onto to get items. There's like bats flying through, coming after you. It's got a pretty cool sound too. So that's a really nice game. Another win for Jim Gary.
Very cool, Jim.
This next one is from John Aycock, Reverse Engineering an Atari 2600 game. What's interesting about this article is he's using a package developed by the NSA for reverse engineering called, was it Ghidra?
Ghidra, yeah.
Yeah? You want to talk some more about that, John?
Well, it's mostly just a reference to talked about this guy's book, Vintage or Retro Game Archaeology or something like that in one of the earlier programs. It's just kind of cool how he takes a very serious and academic approach to looking at some of these old games and uses some interesting tools to do it. That, like you said, Ghidra for the static analysis. Stella, of course, is kind of the gold standard Atari 2600 emulation platform. So he's got an emulator running, and he's working through it. And of course, he says Ghidra for static analysis, Stella for dynamic analysis, and coffee because coffee. So kind of a joke, but
yeah, that Ghidra's that's open source or freely available, right?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah, pretty interesting. All right, our next one is from Stephen Hug. If that's Hugh or Hug, optimizing C-array lookups for the 6502. Kind of a study.
Yeah,
I guess.
Well, it's not for the 6809, but it is kind of in the same ballpark. It might be interesting to some folks to see this kind of analysis of these compilers that target these 8-bit machines. There's probably some similar analysis that could be done for CMOC or the C compiler under OS9 or whatever. I don't know, it's interesting to me just because it's, kind of technical and very down and dirty, low-level programming stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting comparison between the Z80 and the 6502 as well.
Yeah.
All right, our next one is from Fabrizio Caruso. I've updated my guide on how to write optimized and portable C code for all vintage 8-bit systems.
Yeah, so this fellow, Fabrizio, he's kind of taking it on himself he's got a game called Cross Chase. I think we've covered it in the past. But it is written in C and it targets 8-bit processors. And he's got basically the same game running on, well, if not every machine you can think of, it's probably just because he hasn't got there yet. And I don't know. It's one of those. It's interesting that he can do it and have a recognizable game across all the different Commodores and the Mattel Aquarius and TRS-80s and whatever else. I'm not sure it's the most expansive game or whatever you're going to see, but that's kind of one of the trade-offs you make when you go multi-platform, right? So again, an interesting discussion on writing code and porting it between different processors, and the kind of processors that people listening to the show might have an interest in. Check it out and see what you think.
Our next one is from Steve Bamford. Spotted an interesting game project in the homebrew section of Retro Gamer magazine. This is really cool. This is about a game that was released for the Thomson TO8, which is a 6809 computer that's pretty similar to the CoCo, but it has better graphics and sound. But the game is called Mission Liftoff. When you follow the link, there's two videos. One's kind of a promo of it. One is actual gameplay. They're both fun to watch, but watching the gameplay was pretty neat, the way that the game works. But this is definitely one of those things that would be great on the CoCo 3 if someone wanted to port it, and it would be great to team it up with the GMC for sound. Falls under the category of not a CoCo project, but it could be.
Could be.
Could be.
What are your preferred AGD converted games for 6809 machines? Of course, past couple of episodes, we've had some coverage of Per Surratt and his effort of writing a 6809 or CoCo or Dragon engine for taking the data for the arcade game designer games and running them on those machines. And so now he's running a poll. You can pick 5 options and order them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and submit the poll. And so I recommend you do this, especially if you're playing the games. Check them out and play some of the games. And, give Per some feedback. And I'm not sure what question he's trying to answer. It may be as simple as, is anybody using these games? In which case, we definitely want to give him some positive feedback. It might be that he's also looking for whether or not the games that have color graphics are being preferred over the games that have the black and white graphics, or vice versa. That sort of thing. So definitely, if you've been checking out those games at all, go and fill out Per's survey and see if you can help him out with whatever information he's trying to find. So moving on to, all right, Sim 8800, an Altair emulator for Apple II from Charles Mangan. Charles actually is not quite a neighbor, but he lives kind of in the general area. Met him at Kansas Fest, of all places. Anyway, so it is an Apple II project, but it could be a CoCo project if somebody wanted to do it. We've got a graphic that emulates the front panel of the Altair 8800, which of course was one of the original home computers, or if you can consider it that, for one of the first computers that people could own themselves. Z80 based, and he's emulating it on an Apple II. And it reminds me a little bit of forget who had it now, but a few years ago there was a project that had a CP/M, a Z80 emulator that ran on the CoCo that could actually run CP/M. So we know the CoCo could emulate a Z80. Why not the Z80 stuffed in an S100 machine? Hopefully this inspires somebody. If you come up with an Altair emulator for your CoCo, then please let me know. You gonna run that one, Neil?
Oh, that'd be awesome. For the CoCo.
Yeah. 6809 and OS9 emulator in Java from Soren Rogue. I don't know. I'm sorry. Soren, if you hear me mispronounce your name, please let me know how to correct it. We have here a GitHub project for it's called OS9-Java, using Java as his implementation language for a 6809 emulator, emulating some sort of single board computer, and looks like he can boot up OS9 on it and run Basic 09. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Even build it using Maven, which is something I've never learned how to do, but I know this fellow Soren at one time in the past had an emulator that would run on I don't know. I don't remember if it was a Spark, like on the Sun OS kind of machine, or if it was for Linux. Maybe, probably the same code could do either to some degree. Anyway, he had an emulator that you could hook into your Unix workstation and run OS 9 executables from the command line. So pretty cool. So long time OS 9 user there. All right. Well, thank you, Soren, for sharing. Very cool. This one's kind of cute. From Jim Brain, he says, my daughter is taking, quote, perfect pre-orders for the following items. The young Miss Brain, she accompanies her father at CoCo Fest more than once, and as part of the trip a couple of times, she's had baked goods. And sometimes these are very welcome on the CoCo Fest floor after you've been hanging around with your CoCo Geek friends for a while. And so she's trying to get ahead of the event a little bit and know what to prepare for. So definitely, if she makes too many chocolate chip cookies, I'll be glad to try to help her out with the overflow.
Yeah, I hear they're very good.
All right,
too.
so yeah.
Yeah. She's always at
right.
DCF Midwest, too, with her cookies.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. The next item is an article by Graham Mason at Eurogamer.net. Does the classic 8-bit isometric games that tried to break the mold head over heels through the years. So isometric games, these are the ones with kind of the weird angle, which always gave me a little trouble. Probably the best known example would be Zaxxon. Of course, another example that we've already mentioned once here on this episode would be Nightlore.
That's right.
So it's kind of cool because it gives you sort of a 3D perspective, or it's 2.5D or whatever you want to call it, but it feels like you're peeking into a dollhouse or something instead of just looking down at some graph paper. And so you kind of get that. It's an illusion, I guess, but it feels like a little more like a 3D environment that you're interacting with on your video games. Some people love it. Some people don't. I'm probably in the second category. But that doesn't mean they're not great games.
Crystal Castle, man.
Cool.
Oh, that was
Crystal Castle.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorites.
Marble Madness.
Same here.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, moving on. Let's see. We've got an article. Well, at least what led me to it was by Paulo Garcia. Let's see. What it is, Vintage is the New Old article by Paulo. It says, with only 377 bytes, chess skeleton, whatever, might have broken the world record for smallest chess program ever made. I think it's actually been reduced a few more bytes since this came out. If you go look for it, 365 bytes now. So this was written, I guess he's implemented actually for the ZX Spectrum, but still cool if you're a computer chess player or a computer chess programmer, take interest in these sort of things. It's kind of amazing. I mean, you're talking about the 10-line basic programs.
Yeah, 377 bytes. That's nuts.
300 bytes is not much of a program. I mean, basically any picture you put up is going to be more than 300 bytes.
Yeah.
And so to do a reasonable chess opponent, even just be able to do, I don't know if I could implement a chess game that you could actually, play chess, two people against each other in that amount of space, and to include enough intelligence in that amount of space. Well, it just seems a little over the edge, whatever.
I was
anyway,
thinking of a line from a famous movie, the only winning move is not to play, because I don't see how you could play anything.
Yeah. Well, you won't be able to play if you have to rely on me to write that one. That's for sure. All right, well, let me move on here. This one's kind of weird, but it's a tweet from Alan Alda. Most of you will be familiar with his, he's been an actor, a famous actor for some time. Of course, probably his most famous, long-lasting role was as Captain Hawkeye Pierce on the TV show MASH. Anyway, so he posted a tweet wishing a happy birthday to, quote, legendary Mad magazine artist Mort Drucker, who was turning 90. Happy birthday, Mort. And so he posts a picture, and it shows, well, of course, Alan Alda is portrayed in a kind of a caricature form, along with Isaac Asimov, the back of what appears to be a Charlie Chaplin character. I think that's Dick Cavett. There's a guy there who seems to be supposed to be William Shatner. I'm not sure that William Shatner is depicted very well. So anyway, Charlie Chaplin, of course, back in the day was a character promoting the IBM PC. Isaac Asimov did promotions for the TRS-80s. And Dick Cavett, I think he did some for Apple. Bill Cosby did some for TI, I believe. Alan Alda, who did he promote for?
Atari.
Apple, maybe?
Atari.
Oh, Atari. There
Yeah.
we go.
He did Atari, and Shatner did Commodore.
William Shatner, Commodore, right. But if you look more closely, each of them has a computer in front of them, and the computers that's in front of each of these characters is unmistakably a Color Computer 2. I guess it might be a 3. I can't see the function keys, but so when Mort Drucker drew the picture, I guess he just used the CoCo as a stand-in for all the other computers that these guys were trying to represent. So does it mean anything? No, but it's just funny.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, Mort, he knew a good machine.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
For versatile, powerful word processing on the CoCo 3, look no further than WordPower 3. Written in 100% machine language, no other word processor offers the speed, power, or flexibility of WordPower 3. Editing is effortless with WordPower 3. Access the help screen anytime. Features include split-screen editing, mail merge, on-screen 2-column print, spell checker, punctuation checker, and a built-in 4-function calculator accessible while you edit. Printing is a breeze with WordPower 3's built-in print spooler. No more waiting on your printer. Print a large job while you work on another. WordPower 3 provides for up to 72K of text on a 128K system and over 450K of text on a 512K system. That's more text than any other CoCo 3 word processor. WordPower includes a quick reference card and full instruction manual for just $79.95. Step up to the power and versatility of professional CoCo 3 word processing software. Step up to WordPower 3 from Microcom Software.
Fred.
Yeah?
Remember when I wanted to run the business on our color computer?
Yeah.
And you said it was too hard to move back and forth through all those different programs.
Yeah.
And you said all the software would cost $1,000.
Yeah.
Well, you want to hear something?
No.
VIP Library integrates all the applications we need, and guess who sells it?
Tiny Tim.
No, SD Enterprises.
Swell.
All 6 VIP applications are combined onto one disk. VIP Database, VIP Writer, VIP Spell, VIP Calc, Terminal, and Disk Zap. So we can do mail merge, finances, correspondence, all with VIP Library.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it's not $1,000. It's just $169.95.
Wonderful.
Finally, we'll have time to go see a movie.
No. VIP Library, the only integrated application suite your CoCo will ever need.
All right, so moving on. Let's see. This is from Andy Fox. Don't know Andy. Must be a dragon fellow. Says, hey guys, does anyone have a copy of the instructions for Phil Harvey Smith's MMC card? I put mine somewhere safe and now I can't find them. I guess we've all had that happen to us at one time or another.
Yeah.
But so it's just sort of kind of a reminder that, you know, everybody loves the CoCo STC, is in the community and does some cool stuff. But there are some other similar cards available, different options, and this one's kind of specific. Well, I think it's supposed to be able to run with a CoCo, or at least will be at some point or whatever. But the Dragon MMC card, and like I said, it's an SD card access in a CoCo card style hardware. So it looks like Simon Hardy did provide a link to the instructions. So just to, like I said, a reminder that the world is bigger than just CoCo STC. Here's an article in the Atlantic. The article, the author is David Graham. Who still buys whiteout and why? It's an interesting kind of topic, I guess. It's like, you know, whiteout was pretty much, you know, this is the correction fluid that people would use in place of erasing types of stuff that actually paint over their incorrect typing. There was a brand, an alternative to whiteout called Liquid Paper. Both of them, I guess, are still available and still selling some amount. Let's see.
I remember the blonde joke about her using the whiteout on her CRT.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a copied document, you can use whiteout on it and then recopy it if you need to cover something up. I wouldn't know how else you would use it.
Big spokesperson pointed to a series of weird and entertaining interactive YouTube ads for Tipex in Europe and said that Whiteout is launching colored dispensers that will appeal to younger consumers. What are young people doing? They're probably eating it. Who knows? Whatever. Well, moving on. Still, food for thought. People are still buying Whiteout, but we're the silly ones for buying old computers, right?
Yeah, right.
So, all right. Well, let me move on here. The Mini ITX Retro System. What? So, those of us old enough to remember the baby AT style cases, which were eventually replaced by ATX cases, and then later there was, was there an ITX and then a Mini ITX? Seems like there was.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a motherboard form factor, so you can buy a case separate from a motherboard, essentially is the point. And so somebody's building one, but it's based around the Western Design Center 65816, which of course is the processor used in, of course, the Super Nintendo and the Apple II GS. And there's a relative of the 6502. So ultimately it comes back down to, this is not a CoCo project. It's not even an Apple II project, but whatever. It could be a CoCo project. Somebody is building a Mini ITX case around the 65816, then somebody could build one around the 6809. So all you hotshot hardware guys out there, including the Mark Marlets and the Snyders of the world, get to work on our Mini ITX motherboards, all right?
Yeah. Yeah, we could use that.
That would be kind of cool.
Would.
Probably more cool than trying to wedge brand new hardware into aging plastic and breaking our connectors for our gimmies and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on. Let's see. Here's one from Fabian Stanglard. I'm probably messing that one up too. I doubt if he's listening to this podcast. But if he is, if you are Fabian, tell me how to pronounce your last name. It's actually not a very new article. It's dated back. I'm not sure why I came across this one. Prince of Persia Code Review Part 1. And I think there's multiple parts. But a few years ago, Jordan Mechner, who was the author of Prince of Persia, which was a pretty cool little, I guess you'd call it a platform adventure kind of game for, the PC, originally on the Apple II. Pretty awesome for the way its graphics were really smooth. The main character literally rotoscoped, which, the animation came from him filming his little brother doing stunts.
Yeah.
And then he
Amazing.
programmed the code so the graphics matched his little brother on a VHS tape. Amazing. Fabian Sanglard, fellow, he's written a couple of books on on the Doom engine and on the Wolfenstein 3D engine, do the same sort of code walkthrough or whatever. And so he goes through and talks about some of the techniques being used. And, it's for the Apple II, okay. But when you're programming an assembly at this level, there's a lot of the tricks either can be directly reused or they can inspire a similar thing that's not exactly the same but still useful on a CoCo, for example. So expand your mind, just like saying learn another language to expand your mind. Check out these other programming examples to expand your mind. Pretty cool stuff. All right, check it out. I got one more here. This comes from Ed Snyder. It says a stepping stone to a Super Sam project. Super Sam, what is that? Well, so turns out I'm going to try to summarize this a little bit if I understand it correctly. Basically, so Ed's cooperating with Brendan Donahue on the CoCo VGA project, and Ed's working more on the the board level hardware kind of side of it for the most part. But I assume he had to dip down into some of the hardware, the HCL stuff, VHCL or Verilog, whatever they're using here. I assume he had to dip into that to do this level of changing. But as you may know, in the CoCo 1 and 2, there is a option to let you double clock the CPU. The clock is gated by the SAM, but the problem being is if you double clock the CPU, that you're using up the extra cycles accessing the RAM that the VDG would normally need to be able to to be fed data, and so it messes up your video output, right? Since they've kind of intercepted or put themselves in the middle of this, he's been doing some experimentation and develops a technique where you basically, if you're using the CoCo VGA, you can run the clock faster. And since the CoCo VGA is handling the video and not the original CoCo hardware with the right set of handling or whatever, you can let the clock run faster. Ultimately, what he says is this is basically a stepping stone, and maybe you could the CoCo VGA project could lead to a Super SAM project where you could replace the SAM chip. And so, is this cool? I don't know. Can you being able to clock the CoCo 1 and 2 at double speed all the time, the way you can do a CoCo 3, certainly could make your CoCo 1 or 2 programs run a little faster. It sounds like there's some other caveats. I don't know how many of those are inherent to the design or how many of them could be worked out or whatever. Some changing the interrupt rates for the video interrupts and stuff. That'll break a lot of programs that are already existing. If the point is to be able to write faster programs for your CoCo 1 and 2, I guess that's cool. I don't know, at some point you kind of lose some of the point of writing a retro program is to live within the limits of the machine. And so, I don't know, sorry, I don't mean to editorialize too much here, but if this kind of project, if that sounds like something you want to do, then definitely go and poke Ed about it and see if you can get him to produce this hardware or this change to the CoCo VGA or whatever other hardware is needed, and then you'll be going double speed in your CoCo 1 and 2. What do you think, Ron? Is that what you want to do?
I don't know. I was thinking about what would apply. Maybe not so much games. I guess if you have a CoCo VGA, and maybe if you tie it in with, if it would be compatible maybe with Tormod's Moo, you could run Nitrous 9 Level 2 a little bit faster in 64 column mode. But that, I mean, if that all works, I mean, that would be something, I guess, that might apply for this. But like you said, from a game perspective, I don't know unless somebody's doing something from scratch. But, and maybe Phuzix, I know they've ported that to the CoCo 1/2/Dragon, so maybe there's an opportunity there, because those type of apps, I think, could probably take advantage of the speed.
Yeah. Well, like you say, I mean, there are some opportunities, I guess, if you want to increase your performance in certain applications, especially stuff where you're actively rewriting parts of the system or have control over all the software. Sure. I don't know. It's just one of those that you kind of lose me on the nostalgia factor. It's like, well, if I want to run code on a really fast machine, I have a lot better options, right? So, I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but.
Well, that's pretty cool, but it's detracting from developing the mini ITX 6809 system that we want.
That's true too. Want our new motherboard, right? So, anyway, okay.
Our next news item is from Ian Maverick. For those of you who don't know Ian, he's across the pond in Australia. He does a lot of TRS-80 stuff, but he's recently come into the CoCo scene, which is great. And this new product he has, it's a new Color Computer RS-232 pack, and it's nearly ready. What it is, it's a clone of the original RS-232 Deluxe pack from Radio Shack, Tandy. And I got one coming. It's not here yet. I can't wait to try it out. I'm going to beta test it for him. I've had nothing but issues with my original RS-232 pack, so I'm actually looking forward to this. I know it's just a simple 6551 UART on there, but it's it's going to work with all the old terminal software, so it's going to be great. be able to use DriveWire with it, call some BBSs on Telnet. So I'm really looking forward to it.
It's pretty cool to have replacements available for that stuff. Like you said, you get software compatibility. And
Sure.
Ian has also made a couple of reproductions of disk controllers, and I think recently he just did it wasn't J&M, it was a different one, wasn't it?
It was a J&M.
Yeah, okay, it wasn't J&M, yeah. So
Yeah, it's got the parallel port on that one. That's a nice card. And he did the FD502. I think you picked that up, didn't you, Mike?
yeah, I picked up one of those kits, so fun to build, and I think you can get most of these as kits. So yeah, good to have a source for exact replicas, if you will.
Oh, for sure. I mean, even in my case, I can't find a RS-232 pack that works. It's weird. Like the ones I have, they just drop characters.
Huh.
I thought it was my modem, and then when you sent me that Wi-Fi modem you had, it did the same thing. So I kind of figured, well, it's got to be the pack now. So it's good to have replacements. Our next news item is from Chet Simpson, and it's, I have pushed the most recent updates I had made to the tiled map converter before taking ill. Unfortunately, Chet, he got really sick there, and he was kind of gone out of the CoCo community for a while. He was in it, posting new blogs, updates, and then all of a sudden he was gone. So I'm glad to see he's back.
Yeah, it's good to see some progress come out of that, and nice that he made sure to release that code.
For
Should
sure.
help somebody wanting to write a game or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope he continues with his game development too. That'd be great. All right, our next news article is from Jeremy Schmidt. And this one's kind of neat because it's right up my alley. 23 hidden levels in NES games most players still haven't found. So it's an article just talking about different hidden gems in these games, these old games that people may have not found yet. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I thought that was cool to think that people are playing old games or whatever, and there's still secrets out there. Makes you wonder what CoCo games still have some random secrets hiding out in them.
Exactly. I often think that, actually. If there's any secrets or Easter eggs or something like that.
Probably hidden in Dino
Oh,
Wars.
it could be. It'd be in Dino Wars. Exactly.
All right, our next news article is from Brian Benshoff at Hackaday. And this one's really neat, too, because you see a lot of this, actually. Designing custom LCDs to repair retro computers. You do see a lot of those those TRS-80 Pocket computers. You see them cheap on eBay, but the LCDs are gone.
Yeah,
cool.
and that's really intimidating to me. Is like, I wouldn't know what to do
Right.
if I had one other than just say, "Oh, well, it sure sucks that the LCD went bad."
Yeah, same here.
And it's kind of cool to think there's somebody out there figuring out how to repair them or replace them or whatever. It's cool that the technology is still reasonably compatible too.
For sure. Yeah, that's good to see. We're going to need more and more of that as the time goes by, right? They're not getting any younger.
That's so definitely. Of course, I mean, I don't know how many people are desperate to preserve their pocket computers, but there's bound to be a few people.
Oh, I'm sure. And maybe in time, too.
They'll be at Tandy Assembly.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, our next news article is from Lewin Day at Hackaday.
I think so.
Creating 8-bit games with the multi-platform arcade game designer.
Yeah, so this is the same tool that the Per Surratt's been dealing with. I just thought it was kind of cool to see people taking interest in it, and it's a tutorial on how to go about creating your own game. So why not create your own game and then see if Per can help you target it to the CoCo?
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of is a CoCo project, not exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you draw on a CoCo? Then you need Chroma Sketch, the picture program writer. Chroma Sketch is a graphics package that can actually write a basic program as you draw, paint, and letter on the high-res screen. Simply enable the program writer option and save the program to tape or disk to recreate your picture from basic at any time. Or save the screen as a binary image. Draw complex shapes and patterns. Save these definitions to tape or disk for use in your own basic programs. Chroma Sketch's dual cursors simplify creating arcs, circles, lines, and boxes. Enhance your drawing experience with options like full-screen crosshair cursor cursor, or graph paper grid. Draw complex objects and Chroma Sketch will redraw, rotate, reduce, or enlarge them at any position, in any color or pattern. Paint in any dot pattern, including checks, stripes, or others that you define yourself. Draw dotted or twisted lines. Overlay color patterns for translucent effects. And the fast, compact graphic programs that Chroma Sketch generates are yours to use in any way you wish without license. These basic programs can be used for games, graphic adventures, educational software, or on-screen slideshows. Chroma Sketch can utilize any combination of joystick-compatible devices, including the touchpad or color mouse. Best of all, Chroma Sketch is just $29.95 on cassette and $34.95 on disc, plus free shipping and handling. Chroma Sketch requires 32K Extended Basic and works with all ROM versions. Chroma Sketch, the picture program writer, from Nexus, Knoxville, Tennessee.
What's going on, CoCo Cruisers? The original gamer Stevie Stroh here, and I'm the host of CoCo Talk. What is CoCo Talk, you ask? Well, we are a weekly live talk show on YouTube featuring the Tandy Color computer. And guess what? CoCo Talk is now also available as an audio podcast for your listening pleasure. So when you are done listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast, come check us out at cocotalk.live for weekly live talk featuring the Tandy Color computer. We'll see you there, CoCo Cruisers.
All right, the next news article is from the Video Game Critic. And speaking of Easter eggs, and the one we were just talking about earlier, the day I uncovered the secret of Missile Command. Now, this I didn't know. This was really neat. You just discovered the, if you're on Variation 13 on the Missile Command Atari 2600 game, and if you score 0 points, it'll show RF, and it stands for Robert Fulop. So it's kind of like I guess it's an Easter egg. If you just leave the game sit, right? If you don't have any points, it'll just show up. That's what I'm...
Sure. Which is cool.
Yeah.
But to me, the funny part, you know, he as a kid, he writes into Atari or whatever to tell him, hey, I found this. And eventually he got a letter back from Atari. Oh, my God. And it basically said, it might as well have said, Dear David, eat more Ovaltine.
Yeah. It is fun to read, though, and about how they took a picture of the screen because they just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Stuff like this, you know, this is what I like. You know, I kind of like this actually more than the game itself. I know it sounds weird, but you know, whenever there's some kind of weird secret that comes up in the game, or if you can trigger something, I don't know. I always thought that was cool, even back in the day.
All right. Well, our next two articles are YouTube videos from the Retro Man Cave channel. He puts out some pretty good videos, and I'm always interested when he tries to cover something related to Tandy or TRS-80 or anything like that. He's got one called the Dragon 32 Trash to Treasure series. He got a system donated to him. It wouldn't boot. It looks like it had a power supply issue, so he kind of goes over some of the history of the Dragon, kind of documents how he goes about troubleshooting the power supply and trying to bring the thing back to life. The other thing he covers, too, is a little bit of the history as you compare it to the CoCo, where it got its original design, the Motorola spec for that platform. I think there's like about 4 chips that make up that spec for these old retro computers. He tries to build the case that this is really a clone of the CoCo more than it's its own unique platform. I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of disagreements on that, but it's a good series, and it sounds like there's a part 3 that's pending. So we'll see what that brings.
Yeah, the clone of the CoCo. In reality, they're both the clone of a from the manufacturer's datasheet design or whatever. I mean, I think it even specs the signals on the cartridge port. So they're basically both just cloned from that.
All right, let's see here. Our next news item is from Mike Barla at Adafruit. Pong making a game with 74 series logic chips. Okay, so this was really interesting. I mean, there's not many of us that probably haven't played Pong, whether it was the home version or even at the arcade. I had no idea that there's no CPU in this, in the original version. There's no ROM code. It is all just based on these logic chips. In fact, it fascinated me so much after I read the article, I figured it's got to be emulated MAME. Sure enough, I bring up the MAME source code, and it even says it right in there. It's all TTL chips. There's no ROM code or anything like that. So that was a really neat article.
Yeah, that's really amazing to think that. I mean, Again, talk about trying to write a program in 10 lines of BASIC. You're not even programming at this point.
Yeah.
But there's kind of an apocryphal story about Steve Wozniak, the Apple II designer, and Steve Jobs working at Atari. I think they already had a design for Pong, but it used some, 150 chips or something like that, or 90, however many it was, that they offered a bonus to anybody that could redesign it. You get a bonus for every chip you could design out of it. And that Steve Jobs kind of basically hoodwinked Wozniak into designing Pong, and he saved, 20 chips or something. So then that Jobs was able to claim a big bonus that he only partially shared with with Wozniak or whatever.
Yeah.
And then supposedly that whatever Woz did was just so damn clever that the guys at Atari still couldn't figure out what he really did or how it worked, and so they ended up going back with the original design. I don't know if any of it's true, but it sure is, interesting and fun and a great way to fluff up Wozniak, I guess, huh?
All right, our next news item is from Blake Patterson. Let's talk about capacitor failure. It seems like every month there's always some new article about capacitors. Maybe it's just because we know eventually some are going to fail. And he talks about the different types. He seems to be of the opinion that when he restores equipment, he goes through and he just replaces them, whether they need it or not, just as something to do. Not necessarily saying that's the right way to do it. He does also bring up another point is there ever been a situation where a capacitor's failed and actually done damage, enough damage permanently where you can't fix it? And I can tell you, yes, I have seen it. Great example is the original Xbox. There was a capacitor on the motherboard. Actually, there was like 5 or 6 different revisions of that board. The first 5 had a capacitor that was around a circuit that was like a battery backup type deal. And if you didn't catch that in time, the corrosion would take out some of the traces. I mean, I guess in some cases, depending on how severe, you could restore it. But there's an example of capacitor failure that can do some real damage.
So this is kind of a back and forth point. You'll see different people make different points, I guess. Electrolytic capacitors can fail for sure. And if you open up your case and you see a big swollen or leaking capacitor, well, it's gone. You can't save it. You need to replace it. But, it's become like a thing where people just advise you to just, as soon as you get a piece of hardware, before you ever plug it in, just replace all of the capacitors. And I'm not at all convinced that that's the proper thing to just do.
No.
For, just because. There are capacitor types that are more prone to failure. Apparently, there's refa capacitors, which I don't know a lot about. Apparently, they can explode, just fail and explode. I mean, electrolytic capacitors can explode if you power them up backwards. But that's kind of a danger when you start just blindly replacing them. Is it's easy to mess up. So make sure you replace them correctly. Just blindly replacing them all. You've cited an example of a failure that could lead to more stuff. But I'd say that's pretty rare, that usually when they fail, they're just, the voltages will be too low or not, not filtered well enough. Now, can that damage some stuff? I'm sure it's possible, but I just don't think it's very common for that to be a problem. So, I don't know. Your mileage may vary. If you like soldering and desoldering and don't mind having 100 little tin cans to dispose of or whatever, fine. Try not to lift the traces off the board and don't screw up any CoCo motherboards and we'll be fine. But
that's right.
If you're one of these people telling everybody to just immediately replace all your electrolytics, maybe you should back off of that a little bit. I don't think you're doing anybody any great favors.
I've never been a fan of the recap mentality just to do it. And going back to the Xbox, that you're right, it's probably a rare thing. And honestly, that cap is not really needed for the thing to operate. What most articles will tell you is just if you can catch it in time, clip it, get it out of there. You don't have to do anything else, and that'll save you some grief.
No, I can imagine that's true too. Now, I will say as an arcade collector, I've replaced capacitors on dozens of monitors, maybe not dozens, but it feels like it. Quite often, replacing all the caps on a monitor turns a dead piece of glass into a working monitor. I would never have been able to diagnose the one capacitor that was worthwhile to replace. And especially if I misdiagnosed it, I wouldn't want to have to pull the monitor out again and replace the second one or the third one. So if you do get down to I'm going to replace some capacitors point, well, then in that case, maybe it is worthwhile to replace several, maybe all of them. But if you don't already have a problem, just as a prophylactic, I'm not sure you're doing yourself that much good or whatever.
All right, our next item, Bill Pierce, M-Shell version 103W. I'm actually a fan of this. He's had this out for a while now. It's Nitrous 9. I'm not sure if it runs under regular OS 9. I'm guessing it probably does. It's a GUI-based file manager. He's got a lot of features in it. You have DriveWire, and it can actually update itself. It's a pretty neat product. He's got a lot of work into it. But during the announcement of this, he did say that he's trying to get away, I think, from the GUI version. He wants to save some resources, some memory, and he's going to a console version, which I'm not opposed to that either. I've been a fan of file managers, text-based ones for quite some time, in the old DOS days, your X-Tree Golds, things like that. Linux, Midnight Commander. I think even Nick had mentioned something about that. So we'll see. It looks like this will be the last GUI version. I do recommend it. I installed it. It's working very well.
Cool.
Next item is from Ernie Smith, The Ghosts of Windows 3.1. I thought this was really interesting. I didn't know Tandy had a clone of the, the CDI?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then it ran,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then it ran a version, like an older, I'll say older, it was kind of a hybrid version of Windows 3.1. I think that's what the article, it focuses on other equipment, but this was one from Tandy. This was before Windows CE and some of the other lightweight Windows clones that are out there. It did cover some other stuff. There was even some talk about a Commodore 64. I think it was a German version, something like that. I didn't get a chance to get through the whole article, but there was also some Windows components within that. So it's a pretty neat article. There's going to be a link in the show notes to it. I recommend people take a look at it.
Talking about the Tandy Viz and whether that was good or not, I'm not sure calling it a clone of the CDI is totally accurate, but kind of in that same ballpark at least. But yeah, it ran this modular Windows or whatever, which I guess eventually turned into either Windows CE or the predecessor of that, or whatever. Back in the time when Microsoft wasn't happy to just own the regular PC market. They were mad that people were using DOS to do embedded systems, so they wanted them to use Windows to do embedded systems. Whatever, but I don't know, growing pains, I guess. But it's kind of interesting to see how certain things are used at different times.
And then our next news item from the Accidental Poet on Reddit. Somebody had posted some pictures and some information about, has anyone ever seen a home-built TRS-80 clone? And when they say TRS-80 clone, it looks like it has a 6809 processor in it. Boy, this thing, the photos, just seeing the photos themselves, the amount of work that probably went into this. I was trying to read some of the feedback on it. It sounds like that some of the ROM chips actually had to be dumped and they were burned onto some EEPROMs and things like that. It didn't show it running any code that I could see, but it's got a lot of ports. It's got a cartridge connector. It does look like a CoCo clone to me. I just don't know if it would run like one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a functioning clone. They had a link to a picture site that has some pictures.
Yeah, it had a picture of the Microsoft Basic.
Yeah.
Basic, so.
Oh, I didn't see that. I just saw the pictures of the device. Okay.
It's definitely a CoCo clone. Pretty cool.
Yeah. It's just funny that people, TRS-80 that ran the 6809, did that even exist? It's like, okay, it did. Sometimes you don't know quite as much about the past as you think you do, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, it's kind of cool. And like we're saying, that was more possible back then, especially once you realized the CoCo was basically taken from the Motorola datasheet for the SAM. And so, not that hard to wire up yourself if you really want to.
How much RF shielding in this one? Little bit, not much.
All right, well, that concludes our news for this month. So why don't we take another little break, and then we'll be back with some feedback.
Hi, CoCo Cruisers. It's me again, Candy Weller, with some tips to make your CoCo Fest experience successful. If you're traveling a long distance to Lombard, make sure you stay hydrated. A bottle of water in between soft drinks, coffee, and energy drinks will keep your body ready for the event. It will also force some extra bathroom stops along the way, keep you more alert. Truck stop vending machine sandwich. And finally, if you get really sleepy, just imagine what I'm wearing as I'm recording this. Until next time, this is Candy Weller, wishing you a safe and happy CoCo Fest.
Whoa! What do you want, mister?
I'm looking for gold.
Shoot, mister, we ain't got no gold around these here parts. But you can look all you want.
We got plenty of lead and tin, though. Who are you? What you got there, stranger?
It's the new J&M Systems JFD CoCo Disc Controller. It sets a new standard in performance and quality. Its built-in digital phase lock loop data separator means no need for adjustments, ever. And the card contacts, pure gold. Woo-hoo! Best of all, the JFD CoCo is plug compatible with the original CoCo and the new CoCo 2.
How much, stranger?
Just $139.
Wait, where can I get one?
From J&M Systems, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
All right, welcome back. Now it's time for a little feedback. We have a couple items this month. First one comes from Mr. Jim Gary. He says, episode 41, thanks for another great show. My Adventure Tour of Castles video is a very early snapshot of the project, which is indeed a remake of Atari Adventure. And here's a link to the alpha version. That link will be in the show notes. This is from Jim Gary. So thank you, Jim. Been cool watching you progress on your Atari Adventure clone. I think the Semigraphics is a pretty good match for that. Second item, this is in reference, so this is the month of April, and so the 1st of April, traditionally, at least in the English-inspired world, the Anglophone, whatever, is April Fool's Day. I don't know if that carries over to other parts of the world or whatever, but April Fools, you're supposed to do a dumb trick or whatever. And so I posted on our site that we were rethinking and had decided to change our format, and that we were going to do a live video show on a weekly basis, which some people thought maybe sounded like something that might already exist. But I made a point of saying that we're going to do this, and we think that this is a completely unique format that no one's ever tried before, which I thought was pretty clearly a joke.
Yeah.
But apparently I got a couple of people. You could tell from the responses that I had got a couple of gotchas. But so this is from Paul Thayer. He says, I got all excited until I read the date stamp on the post. Well done. So I'm glad somebody appreciated that.
That was funny.
It was well written.
So,
yeah.
All right. So that's our feedback for this month. We're going to take another little break, and then we'll be back probably with a little discussion among the hosts.
This month in CoCo history.
Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we go back 37 years to the genesis of a color computer peripheral that still influences designs today. But first, a correction. In last month's segment on the Middle America Fest that was sponsored by Mid-Iowa and Country CoCo, I mistakenly referred to the year of that event as 1983. It actually took place in 1993. My apologies for the error. And now, back to our segment. The year was 1982. The Battleship Gray color computer was on the market for 2 years, and the CoCo 2 was just a twinkle in the eye of its designer, John Prickett. But Tandy wasn't idle. Their engineers had a number of CoCo products in the chute that year, including a peripheral that wouldn't be released until 1983. It would bring a serial port to the color computer, along with a simple but useful terminal program built into the ROM. The product I'm talking about is the Deluxe RS-232 pack. On April 12, 1982, a designer by the name of Boyer drafted drawing number 8000148, the schematic for the Deluxe RS-232 pack. We know this because the schematic is available on colorcomputerarchive.com. Other notes on the drawing indicate updates to the schematic in September of that year and again in October and December of 1983. It would take over a year for the Deluxe RS-232 pack to make its debut in the 1984 Radio Shack catalog. These days, you might still find the Deluxe RS-232 pack for sale on eBay or at the CoCo Fest auction, but they are in short supply. If you think the technology is obsolete, however, think again. The Deluxe RS-232 pack's internals are easy to copy, and its components remain readily available. It continues to find its way into new CoCo product designs today.
And that's This Month in CoCo History.
Tandy keeps red, red like the brake key. Tandy keeps green, green like the TV. Tandy makes all of your dreams come true. Tandy's got the magic of CoCo 2.
TRS-80 color computers are better than ever. We improved our most popular family computers with a compact white case, low-profile electric typewriter quality keyboard, and reduced the system price. Come see the new TRS-80 color computer too.
Tandy makes a product that's brand new. Tandy's got the magic. Tandy's got the magic. Tandy's got the magic of CoCo 2.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. So as you probably know, especially if you've been with us for longer than a little bit, this, of course, is our episode 47. It's really our 48th episode. We're a monthly podcast, 48th month. Well, that's 4 years. Do the math. Wanted to have a little host discussion. So I kind of influenced the choice here because I want to talk a little bit about something that relates back to why I wanted to do the show, so why we created the show. So, Neil, you're with us here.
Yes, I am.
Hello, Neil.
Hello.
So you and I have been together on this the whole time. And Mike's been together with us for, about 3 years now, I guess.
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah.
So when we started the show, part of the motivation was it felt like that some of the air was coming out of the hobby, or at least out of CoCo Fest. If CoCo Fest fails, I was worried that the whole hobby might fail or whatever. So I wanted to breathe some life back into things. It wasn't too long after I'd done a lot of promotion for Farfall, a lot of promotion in general, a lot of hype around Retro Challenge or whatever. That's just sort of background. So for our host discussions, I have a few topics that have come up over time that I kind of keep a list, and we talk about which ones we want to do at a given time. And one of them that's been around for a little while is it says, who qualifies to be a creator, parenthetically, a writer, a developer, a designer, a programmer, composer, etc. And so I thought that ties in for me to why part of what I wanted to do with this podcast when we started it. And so, I've taken some criticism from certain old blowhards in the community about my musical composing ability, which is honestly, I think it's ridiculous. Okay, you don't like the music, fine, but I'm just a guy out here trying to have some fun with the hobby, kind of produce some stuff. And okay, it's not the greatest thing. It's not a top 40. Nobody's going to give me a Grammy. That's fine. But they make a big thing about, oh, you should hire a professional musician or whatever, which I think completely misses the point. So I'm here writing stuff for the CoCo. It's an expression of me and who I want to be or wanted to be or what I want to do. And it's me reaching out to go kind of beyond myself and have some fun in the hobby. And so I guess that's where I'm at. Who qualifies to be a creator? The answer is pretty simple. You do. So
you all qualify. Yes.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point of this, is to get you to get out your CoCo. I mean, really, 30-some years ago, we were teaching fourth graders how to program computers, which had only really been available to people for a few years that could actually afford to have a computer at home. We were teaching fourth graders how to program in BASIC, and they're creating amazing things. And some of them, including this guy right here, moved on to have an incredible career based around programming stuff and creating things and doing cool stuff. Anyway, the hobby kind of helps us get back in touch with that. I guess that's my thing there. And I didn't let anybody else talk yet. So what do you guys think? What limits should we place on ourselves when we're trying to play with the CoCo? At what point do we say, I'm just not very good at this and I should let somebody else do it, or I should just not do it at all? And at what point do we, or do we instead say, I'm going to learn how to do this. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to please myself with it. And if that's all it is, that's fine.
Well,
I don't know. I've kind of stomped all over this one, but does anybody have anything to add to that?
Well, no, I agree with what you're saying, because I mean, like when I came into the community, and even when I met you, you helped me a lot. I've learned so much just being in the CoCo community. Like when I did the joystick, we wired up that you gave me that diagram for the arcade joystick. I learned a lot from that project. Like I didn't know any of that stuff before, right? So as you do these things, you learn as you go, right? And that's actually why I'm in this hobby. I just like to challenge myself and learn new things, and it's fun.
Yeah,
I'd go along with that. There's just that's the great thing about the hobbies. You're never going to run out of things to learn, whether you're applying new technology or just learning the old technology. I mean, for a lot of us, it's great because we didn't have the opportunity or the know-how or the time back when the CoCo came out to do a lot of these things. And, we get a second chance at it every day, every time you sit down at it. So we just enjoy it. And whether you're just learning to program in BASIC or you want to learn to light up a few LEDs through the expansion port, I mean, it's just we learned back then, and you just continue to learn. So, even people that can't do those things, you can appreciate people that do. You can support the people that you can do. You can support the hobby. You can support the vendors, support CoCo Fest, Tandy Assembly, VCF. Yeah. So there's lots of opportunities to jump in and get involved. You don't have to have your own podcast, but you can contribute in 100 different ways.
Yeah, there's really no way that I can think of to have a counterpoint to this. I agree with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if you're programming something on the CoCo, nobody cares if you finish it. I mean, if you now pre-announce it and talk about how great it's going to be, maybe you kind of create your own problem in that regard. Let's take an example of someone. I think most of us know Roy Justice. He did a video adapter for the CoCo 3. He used to show up to CoCo Fest. Hadn't seen him in a while. I hope he's still doing well. But one of the things that he did several years, he showed up at CoCo Fest, and he one time he had a demo, and it was a wireframe drawing of I think it was a cube. It had a couple of joysticks, or one joystick. I don't know. He had at least one joystick. You could manipulate the joystick, and it would change the speed and direction of this rotating wireframe cube graphic. And I asked him, what is this? Why did you do this? Whatever. And he said, well, I just wanted to learn how to do it.
Right.
And it's like, well, what better reason do you need? And, he didn't have to go and tie up a brand new laptop or anything like that. He didn't have to go learn a cutting edge language or whatever. He was able to program it in BASIC or, I think it was in BASIC, maybe it was in assembly language, whatever. But, he just had a desire to learn how, to learn the mathematics involved in displaying a wireframe cube from different angles. And so it was amazing, right? I mean, it's cool. What can you do with it? Well, nothing. I mean, you can set it up and display it. And then if you have people that are entertained by it, then that's great. If he'd never done it, how many people would care? Nobody. Right? And he did do it. How many people care other than me? Nobody. Right? But it's still cool. It still brought him pleasure. A few years ago, I did a program I know Ron's familiar with where I could translate YouTube videos into something that could be displayed on the CoCo 3. Did it change the world? No. Well, it's the same old blowhard. Compared it to watching TV from across on the other side of a mountain where you could just barely make out Star Trek through the fuzz. I thought that was a little bit harsh, but, it's not totally wrong. But still, the point wasn't to make to compete with DirecTV or whatever or YouTube. The point was just to see if it could be done at all, and in the process, learning something about how to optimize the code and optimize what the steps were involved in being able to process data at that rate. I want to bring music into video games on the CoCo, and without having to spend all the time of the programming just on the music itself, because it's really the game's the important part, right? So I figured out how to build a card for the CoCo that included a music generator, and I composed my own music for that. And the music actually does sound exactly like I wanted it to. It's not like some compromise or, boy, I couldn't figure out how to move from a C to a G or whatever. It sounds exactly like I want it. And if you don't like it, okay, you don't have to listen to it. But to sit back and tell me, oh, you should have got a professional musician to do it, it's like, well, kiss my butt very much, So, again, the point of the hobby is to experience the hobby, to get in and do some stuff on your own. Exactly. And scratch your own itch and, maybe learn something. Well, hopefully learn something. And, wrap your brain around a problem and solve it yourself. You're qualified to do it. If the music sounds good to you, then guess what? You're a composer. If the program does what you want it to do, guess what? You're a programmer. If the game, if you do an interactive fiction game and the game has a story, wrote the story, guess what? You're a writer. That's just all there is to it. I don't like elitism in general. I don't like snotty, opinionated people telling you what you can and can't do, or how you shouldn't have bothered because it's not up to their standard. And 9 times out of 10, they're measuring something against something you didn't care about anyway. So I apologize if this comes across as a little chip on the shoulder-ish or whatever. The point really is just we do sometimes get some negative people in the hobby. The negative people seem the least able to respect other people's opinions and to hold back on things they shouldn't be saying. And sometimes it can drag you down. Don't let the turkeys get you down.
Yeah. Yeah, you do your best work when you're just trying to impress yourself.
Exactly. Do you qualify to be the creator? You do. You're creating your own world, your own vision of whatever the CoCo needs to do. If you can't figure out how to do it, well, then you live within the boundaries of your abilities, or you find somebody who can help you do it and get them to do that part. And hopefully in the process, you learn how to do a bit more yourself. But that's what this is about. It's a learning experience, a mental exercise. I don't know. I love it. That's why we're here. That's why this podcast exists. Well, the reason why this podcast exists is to get people to come to CoCo Fest.
But that was the whole point.
That's right. Come to CoCo Fest.
Come to CoCo Fest. But come to CoCo Fest and meet Neil and meet Myro, meet Ron, meet me, meet Boise, Mark Marlette, meet other people who are interested in doing amazing things with the CoCo, even if they don't know how to do it. And I hope that's what we see a lot of at CoCo Fest this year and for all the years that it continues.
And nobody talk smack about that CoCo video player of yours, John. That is still one of my favorite projects for the CoCo. I'm still so impressed with that. The Penguins Christmas caper running on that thing couldn't have looked any better.
I'm still pretty pleased with it myself. Like I said, there was another video player project that came along, and everyone seemed unable to remember that it wasn't the first one done. And that was a little disheartening.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the first one done. Mine was. And I happen to still think mine's pretty awesome. It doesn't matter. If the person who did that other video player thinks that theirs is awesome, it is awesome. It's good for them. I'm glad they enjoyed it and glad they learned something. Maybe we should get together and compare notes sometime. So if you happen to have written a video player for the CoCo, please show up to CoCo Fest and we'll have a beer. Or, you know what? Tandy Assembly, that'd be fine too. And we might even be able to drink the beer on the floor. We'll see.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's enough of that, I guess. Anybody got anything else to add?
Well, I thought it was a good segment. It's true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. And we'll now return you to the rest of the show.
New from Saguaro Software. Eagle, an enhanced lunar landing simulation for the color computer.
Eagle, you are go for orbital descent. Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Break from orbit and use your skill to land safely on the surface. Dual joysticks control your craft's thrust and attitude. Your flight computer continually displays horizontal and vertical velocities, acceleration values, vertical and horizontal distances to the surface, fuel consumption, and more. At advanced levels, test your mettle by injecting problems such as fuel leaks and display failures. Land and launch the upper stage back into orbit.
We are go for liftoff.
Eagle is as educational as it is fun. 32K color computer with 2 joysticks required. Eagle is just $24.95 on cassette or $29.95 on disc or AMDEC cartridge. Eagle from Saguaro Software. Is your TRS-80 Model 3 or 4 suffering from keyboard fatigue? Do you have to press keys more than once to get a response? Maybe you have keys that don't work at all. Original keyboards are expensive and difficult to find. Plaid Vest Software has the solution. New Key 80. The New Key 80 Duo Joy allows you to connect a modern PS2 or USB keyboard to your TRS-80 Model 3 or 4. Plus, it features an Atari-compatible joystick port that works with most TRS-80 games. New Key 80 fits easily inside of your TRS-80, and you can still keep your original keyboard connected. It works with most PC keyboards. Enjoy fast, accurate key response, native TRS-80 key repeat, and it handles special keys independently for amazing compatibility. A fully working keyboard is essential to operating your TRS-80. Stop suffering with a flaky keyboard. Visit www.newkey80.com to order yours today. That's www.newkey80.com. The New Key 80 Duo Joy from Plaid Vest Software.
All right. Hello, CoCo Cruisers. Welcome to this month's tech segment with John. Hi, guys. Hard to believe I've been doing this for 4 years. Not sure how many of these I might have missed out. Not many. Had a couple of 1 or 2 guest tech segments. Anyway, it can be a little tough thinking up something worth talking about for a tech segment sometimes. Quite often I fall back on a project or a piece of a project I've worked on recently or something that came up that I remembered. That's sort of where we're going this time. You know, I'm a Linux guy, which means I'm kind of an old-time Unix guy. I like to do a lot of things from command line. I use a lot of tools that some people consider esoteric. I do use the VI editor, but that's beside the point here. One tool that I do use a lot when I'm programming, especially when I'm doing low-level retro computer stuff, I often find the need to manipulate data from different sources and to try to do conversions on that data, and either small edits or sometimes taking just the guts of the data and moving it to another format or another, often with some sort of transformation along the way. One of the tools that I use a lot, or one of the things I like to do, when you're debugging, you want to see what data is passing through or whatever, you need some way to take the binary data that just kind of flows by and turn it into something you can see. Generically, that's usually called some sort of hex dump tool or sometimes a hex editor or something like that. Hex editors can be handy, particularly if you just want to make the edit right in the middle of something or whatever, and I have used those. But something that I've been using quite a lot over the past several years, really, there's a tool that's a kind of a generic, common, at least on Linux and maybe some other Unix style systems. It's called XXD. So XXD says make a hex dump or do the reverse. XXD creates a hex dump of a given file or standard input. So for Unix people there, that means it can be operated like a filter. You can pipe the output of another command into it. And for that matter, you can pipe the output of XXD out to other things or redirect them. So you can make the hex dump, or it can also convert a hex dump back to its original binary form. Like UU encode and UU decode, it allows the transmission of binary data in a mail-safe ASCII representation. Moreover, it can be used to perform binary file patching, which is kind of where we're going with it. There's a number of options, fairly simple. There's even one for EBCDIC, which for those who don't know, you may be familiar with ASCII or ASCII, American Standard, just something. Anyway, ASCII is the format that's, we're used to where, certain numbers correspond to the letter A or B or whatever. There's other standards, some strong enough to still survive, and one of those is EBCDIC, EBCDIC, and that's the format used on IBM mainframes. Sometimes you might run into that. I don't know about if you're doing a CoCo project or not, but if you do run into it, you can use XXD to handle EBCDIC as well. So one of the options is pretty handy. It has a -S option for start, so you can give it a size either in decimal or even hex with a 0x option, or encoding for the hex values. So you can basically say skip the first so many bytes. That's pretty handy. We'll maybe talk through a little example in a minute where we take the header off of a bitmap file. And so as long as you know the size of that header, you don't really care what it looks like once you get down to actually operating on the data. You just want to skip it. So that's a good way to do it. Also, of course, there's the length option. So if you only want to operate on so many bytes of the file, you can pass it a length option, -L. I should say, basically what you're doing when you're passing data into XXD, you pass a binary file in and it spits out a hexadecimal representation. And by default, each line has a 4-byte address, I guess. I think they started that. Anyway, a hexadecimal value representing the offset end of the file with a colon, and then a number of columns. I think by default they're 2-byte columns that have hexadecimal values that represent the binary values in the file, and then after some number of columns it'll also tend to give you an ASCII representation that kind of keeps you have some idea of where in the file you are, if you have any idea if you are looking at a file that has some ASCII data but mixed in with other things. There's a -C option for column length, so you can make those columns wider or not. I think we'll probably use that in our example too. The skip and the length and the column width. There is a -B option, which will have it, instead of being in hex, the data will be dumped out in binary. I have a different example, I think, that we'll talk about. Well, that can be handy. The problem with the binary one, for whatever reason, when you do binary, you can't use the reverse option, the plain option, or the include option. It guts the rest of the value of the tool. But, there might be some point where you want to convert to binary and you want a machine to do it so you don't mess it up. While we're right here thinking about that, well, first, let's talk about some of the other options. As I was mentioning, normally when you do your dump, there will be on the left-hand side, there is essentially an offset value, which might be handy when you're looking through a file. I haven't done a lot of using the reverse option, which we'll talk about in a second, but with addresses in there, I think it can mess up your reverse operation if you have addresses in your input. Might be wrong. I don't know why bother with it. If for some reason you don't want those addresses in because they don't apply or you're just not dealing with them, you can use the -P for plain, which does the output without, it's just binary number or just the hex numbers at that point. Personal preference on when it's output. It also skips the ASCII representation on the right side when you do plain. I think it's most useful actually in combination with the reverse option, which we're going to talk about now. If you have a sequence of hex values that you want to turn into a binary file, then you can use the -plain option so you don't have to have the addressing. Then you can basically just feed the hexadecimal sequence. So this is useful when you're composing. If you're using scripting tools and such, or you're just a hand editor, then you can actually compose the binary values up with the hexadecimal representation, and then you pass it through this tool to get the binary output. So, so that's kind of useful. Let's say you're trying to do a quick hack of essentially a drawing of a graphic on the screen, and you just happen to have the color values in your head, and you're able to draw something small that way. You can just put the numbers out in a file in the right order and then pass them through this. It'll turn it into a binary blob that then you can embed in your assembly language and or your machine language output. That can be helpful. I mean, if you can't see how it's helpful, I'm not sure I can tell you that in this talk through, but maybe you can see it otherwise. All right. Anyway, so I mentioned that we're going to put a few of these things together, and so I mentioned there was the option for binary, which you can't use the binary option on the same command line or in the same command itself, rather, as the -R or the -P or the -I options. But here's something you can do. So I've got a little command here where I've said XXD space -R, so it's reverse, and space -P, which is plain. So I'm going to be able to type, I'm going to have it just reading from standard input. So I'll be able to type some hex values without any special formatting. And it will then, on standard output, it's going to spit out the binary equivalent of that. And so then I've taken and I've extended that command line with a pipe character. So this is Unix command line stuff. Hopefully you can follow along. But then call XXD again. So it's going to suck in the binary values that I've just basically created from the command line. And then with the -B option. So what this will tell me is, let's see, do you remember off the top of your head what the binary value is of, say, hexadecimal? Well, easy one, so hexadecimal 55. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if you want to be sure, you can do this command line and then type your 55 and then the Control-D to say you're done with your input. And then it spits it back and say, okay, the Control-D, it gives me a 0, 0, 0, 0, colon for the offset. So it's offset 0, and then the data 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, which of course corresponds to hexadecimal 55. You can do that over and over again. Let's say, AA, which if you probably know is related to the previous example. And so that time AA will come back again, offset 0, and that'll be 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. I don't know how often that's useful to you, but if for some reason you're needing to translate hex to binary, maybe you're trying to debug something and you're reading hexadecimal values out of the debugger, but you're dealing with a bit field, so you want to make sure you know exactly which bits you're dealing with. here's a little tool that'll help you do it. So let's say that you have created a black and white BMP format file, graphic file, like from the old Windows days, and you'd like to get it onto the CoCo, and you've already resized it for the 256 by 192, the P mode 4 dimensions, and you're trying to prep that data for the CoCo. So it turns out the byte level data for the graphics themselves is compatible as long as you're in a, the 1 bit depth, 8 bits per byte format, which is one of the many options for the BMP format. If you've got your data in that right format, you should be able to just convert it right over and have it loaded on the CoCo, but it's not quite that simple. And so, for example, first thing is it's got a header. If you look in the header and read it appropriately, and if your tools are doing pretty much what my tools have done, you're going to see you have a 146 byte header. The first thing you can do is the XXD with the -S option, so you're going to skip 146 bytes. That will give you the hexadecimal values for just the pixel data, which will be kind of neat to look at, but not entirely useful depending on what you're actually trying to do. And if you're trying to get something that you load on the CoCo, it's not really useful at all. Maybe the next thing you want to do is add the -P option, which drops the left and right column, so you lose the offsets and you lose the translation to binary, or translation to ASCII, and so you get just a bunch of values, and you don't really see much that way unless you're used to reading the matrix or something. But you might start to see some patterns form depending on exactly what your original picture looks like, because you'll start to see F's and zeros and some other values. Certain areas will start to show up, but it's really not quite enough to work with. If the data was perfectly formatted at this point, you could basically just dump that back to a binary and have something to load. But what you'll find is that bitmaps, BMP format files, encode the first bytes in the file corresponds to the row at the bottom of the screen, and they go one row up at a time, whereas the data that you want to load onto the CoCo screen the first bytes are going to be at the top of the screen. So how do we deal with that? Well, you can do something kind of cool to start off with. You can use that -C option for columns and specify 32 bytes, which is the width of a line on the screen. And that kind of gets you closer. And here you might even get a little closer to seeing some of the data that you originally had. Like I'm looking here at a picture of me in a hat that I've converted to black and white, and I can see sort of the outline of the hat. It's almost recognizable. It's kind of neat. So there, you column 32, that almost does it. It'll get you somewhere. But like I said, the lines are in the reverse order. Well, it turns out if you're on a Linux or Unix style system, some of you, if you have any Unix experience, you may be familiar with cat, which means for concatenate or whatever. It means to type out a file, basically. In fact, it's basically the same as the old DOS command type, I guess. Anyway, so somebody at some point thought it was kind of funny that you could have a tool. They had a need for a tool like what we need now, is one that will take in some number of lines and take in the first line, the second line, third line, whatever, up to the last line, and then spit out the last line, the next to the last line, the line before that, and the line before that, until they spit out what was the first line as the last line. And to be cute, they took, because it's similar to cat, but backwards, they name it TAC, T-A-C. So So once you've got your XXD, you're skipping 146 bytes for the header, you're doing it in plain format, and you got 32 byte columns. But like I said, it's spitting stuff out in the wrong order. Well, you can use TAC, so that the lines are now going to be in the correct order. And, this might even get you a little closer to being able to recognize some parts of your of your picture if you're looking closely. But anyway, so here we go. You're getting hexadecimal representation of the bytes that you want to load into the CoCo screen, but loading hex on the CoCo is not going to help you a lot. So what do? Well, okay, you pipe that again, and so this is the strength of the Unix world and the Linux and Unix command lines, be able to pipe things together and do cool stuff with small commands. So you're going to so you've used XXD to convert the binary bitmap file, BMP file, and convert it out to a set of hexadecimal representations that we've massaged into a 32 byte wide column after having skipped the header. And then we fed that to a tool that reverses the line so that what was the top line is now the bottom line. What was the bottom line is now the top line. Then we feed that back to XXD again. We tell it that it's the plain format. We tell it to do the reverse. And then redirect that output, that's using the greater than sign, to a file that will, in this case, let's call it a CoCo file or whatever. But that binary file that you get as a result of that, you could load on a CoCo in a PMode 4 screen, and that data would then give you the same picture as the original BMP file. Now, that's not quite the whole story. If we were going to do this, we'd have to figure out where our screen is going to be. We'd have to add probably a load-in header and footer. Well, how would we go about doing that? Basically, you're putting hexadecimal values onto the beginning and the end of the file. What kind of tool would let us do that to go from hexadecimal to binary? Yeah, maybe you could do something cool with XXD, right? Testing this out, I was kind of reconstructing the bitmap file by taking the old bitmap header, taking the reverse lines, combining the data from reversing the lines with the old bitmap header to make a new bitmap, and it was, the bitmap turned upside down. Like I said, you put it on the CoCo, though, the upside down will be the right way up, because that's just the difference between the BMP format files and how the CoCo hardware works. I'm not going to walk through another demo. We'll discuss a little bit, something else that you may want to do. You use XXD to dump a binary file, say, for example, a disk image file, and then by using some knowledge of the CoCo file system, which you might get from the Disk Basic Unraveled book, or maybe even the original Disk Extended Color Basic book. Once you figure out how the FAT is allocated and how the directory is allocated, and do some math to figure out where in the disk image those should be, you find them in the disk image, and you could go through. You might change the values to change some of the names. You could change the name of a file to be your name, or you could change the values so that you could put in something that might be hard to type. That's just clever. I've seen some hacked disks that had directory entries that were basically turned into little, ads for probably for the hacker or whatever that had done the disk hacking. But, you could put stuff in the disk, in the directory image that could show and do a dir or whatever. Anyway, the main point being is once you've got the hexadecimal output from XXD, you can then load it up in your favorite editor, like VI or Emacs or whatever. And then you could change the hexadecimal values. Just do it right there and save it off, and then pass that back through the XXD with the reverse option and capture that back out to a new binary file. And, at that point, kind of the sky's the limit. you can do whatever you want. So is this helpful? I hope so. I think probably some people doing machine language programs or any kind of program where you might want to get data onto the CoCo that started not on the CoCo, data that started on a PC or something like that. As long as you understand the format of the data and know a little bit about tools that can do what you want to do to transform the data, then this is one of those tools that can help you do that last part where you can get something useful out of your work. So again, the tool's name XXD. If you have a Fedora or Ubuntu or some other standard Linux distribution, I think it should be installed by default. If not, then use DNF or Yum or apt or whatever your package management are to install XXD, and you should have it. I hope this is a fun, informing tech segment for you. Getting awfully close to CoCo Fest. I'm hyped and excited, and I hope you are too. I'm ready for my pilgrimage to Lombard. It's going to be fun, exciting, great, and wonderful. Can't wait to meet you if I haven't already, and if I have, I'd love to see you again. CoCo forever. We'll see you soon.
So you just purchased a TRS-80 Model 1 on the internet?
Yeah, it's going to be great. It was my very first computer.
So did you get a tape player and cassette cable?
No.
How about an expansion interface so you can have more RAM and disk drives?
No.
How about actual 5 1/4-inch floppy drives?
No.
You're not going to be able to do much with your TRS-80 Model 1.
No, I guess I have a lot more purchases to make on the internet.
It's probably going to take a lot more time and money to gather all of those other components, especially when you can't be sure they'll even work until you receive them.
Yeah.
Don't worry. For about the same price as all of those items, you can purchase the Model 1 system expander from Bartlett Labs.
Yeah?
The M1 SE allows you to boot directly into LDOS and access hard drive images stored on compact flash.
Wow!
It also adds extras like an SVGA port, Ethernet, real-time clock, and joystick port. You can even move software directly from your PC to your TRS-80. You'll be enjoying the entire catalog of TRS-80 software in a flash.
Where can I get one?
Just go to bartlettlabs.com for details and pricing.
Thanks.
Bartlett Labs, making your TRS-80 what it was meant to be.
Attention M1 SE and M3 SE owners. Browse Wikipedia with TRS Wiki from PSKI Software Development. TRS Wiki allows you to search and display content from all of Wikipedia, including graphics. Display graphics in low or high resolution. M1 SE owners can display high-resolution graphics on an attached VGA monitor. TRS Wiki supports Wikipedia searches, text-based content browsing with functioning hyperlinks, and image viewing. TRS Wiki is available as a free download from PSKI Software Development. Visit pski.net/TRS Wiki.
Welcome back, CoCo Cruisers. I think we have a real treat for you today. We've gotten a prolific game programmer from back in the day on the CoCo, Greg Zumwalt, famous for Varlock and
Starblaze.
And I probably should bring up the list before I try to remember. But anyway.
It's a long list.
We can't forget my favorite, The Amazing World of Malcolm Mortar.
Oh, very nice. So anyway, we've got a full house this evening. So we've got, of course, I think you heard Neil. Hi, Neil.
Hello, everyone. Hi, John.
Mike Rowan. Hi, Myro.
Hello.
We've got Boise. Hello, Boise.
Hey, guys.
And, of course, we've got Ron Klein. Hello, Ron. How are you?
Hey, everyone. Doing very well. Thank you.
And as, of course, we said, we've got Mr. Greg Zumwalt. Hello, Greg.
Hello, everyone. It's very kind of you to invite me to be here this evening.
Definitely welcome to our podcast. Maybe you can start with just kind of your brief description of maybe your early years and how you got started with computers in general, electronics and such, and of course, the Tandy Color computer in particular.
Well, when I first started, there was a very small computer chip made by a company called Intel, which nobody knows anymore. It was called a 4004. It was a 4-bit microprocessor and was designed for calculator use. And I started programming those. We designed our own circuits using perf boards and wires. And then came the 8008, and then there was the 8080, and it kept growing and growing. But in some place in the fray, a company called Motorola came out with a Motorola 6800. That processor caught my attention more because I thought it was more symmetrical than the 8008 4004. So I started designing equipment for a aviation company based on the 6800 processor. Then Motorola came out with 68000. We transitioned to that. And in the meantime, there was another 8-bit processor called the 6809 that came out. And it happened to be used on the Tandy Corporation color computer. And a friend of mine who worked at a local Radio Shack said, we've got this computer. We don't know what to do with it. Everybody wants to balance the checkbooks with it, but that's about it. Could you write us a game? So I wrote a game, and I called it Packet Man. And I gave it to him, and he put it on a shelf. And a company in a very small town in Oklahoma, I think their name was American Small Business Computers, saw the game and called me and said, would you let us sell it? So I said yes. And they wanted me to write a couple more games. I think I wrote a game called Offender, which was a Defender-like game. And I wrote one other game, and I can't remember. And in the midst of doing this and them selling it in a magazine, I believe it was Lanny's, what was it, CoCo Mag?
Rainbow Magazine?
Rainbow Magazine, yes.
Yeah.
I believe they published it in there. And then a gentleman named Mark Siegel from Tandy Corporation called and said he liked the games and asked if I'd write games for him. Of course, I thought this was a scam. So I first said no. And then he sent me a letter, and we went to do the game concept called Starblade. And it was kind of like my game that I did called Offender, which was an arcade game. But they had their own plan of what they wanted to do. And I said, sure. So I wrote the game for them. I sent it to them, and they liked it. It sold quite well. So Mark started sending me contracts and concepts for all sorts of other material. I wrote a total of 37 video games. Not all of them were color computer related, but there was on IBM PC. There was some Sega games. There was a Atari game, I don't believe. But and that's how I kind of started.
Wow, that's really cool.
While I was doing this, I worked at a company, an aviation company, and after my 5th year there, I was the engineering manager, and I finally went to the president of the company and said, look, these guys want me to write video games, and here's my last check. Why would I stay here? And he said, oh, well, I see. So he let me go, but I had to agree that if they let me go out of my contract with them, that I would come back in and help them on occasion to design motion systems and flight control systems and so forth. So that's what I did.
And so I'm guessing that this background with the aviation electronics and stuff somehow has a cross-section with writing a flight simulator game?
That's exactly correct, yes. The aviation company I work for designed flight simulators. And there used to be called a company called Atkins Merrill. It's now called Flight Safety International. And they have simulation facilities around the world. I'm quite confident that they've outgrown my original designs of 30, 40 years ago. But the software that I wrote, I would guess, is on tens of thousands of aircraft simulators. And if you know what an aircraft simulator is, you get inside of it, and it looks like the actual cockpit. There's a visual system outside. The material I wrote controlled the motion system, controlled the I/O system, and controlled the flight control system, the flight management system, primary flight display, and all the displays in the cockpit.
Wow. That is really cool.
The thing, I hate to say this early in the interview, but my life, I was always blessed because I was always enthralled that someone would pay me to do the stuff that I did because I just loved writing video games. I didn't like playing them, but I loved writing them. I loved writing aircraft simulation and stuff. And I kept thinking, why are people paying me to do what I love to do? But then I didn't say anything because I was having fun doing it. So I didn't want to quit. But I spent, I loved every day I worked. I would work. I was one of the guys that worked nights, weekends, and holidays. I just did it nonstop.
Greg, the fact that you enjoyed your job so much and what you did probably speaks volumes about the quality of what you did as well.
Yes. From time to time, I hired maybe a total of 10 people maximum at any given time. I love the people that work with me. They were great people, but I had to dot the I's and cross the T's. And a lot of people just aren't as, I'm trying to use a nice word for myself, control freak maybe. It just had to work. And it had to work in any condition, whether you could see out the window or not. It had to fly the airplane. Just anything. So I was very obsessed with making sure that everything was, all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed.
Greg, just the nature of the software that you were working on, flight systems, right, where safety is critical and training is paramount. You have to have that attention to detail in the first place. And certainly I'm sure that sharpens your knife so that you could, that you bring that same ethic to writing even a video game.
Yes. When Tandy is going to produce a cartridge and they're going to make 20 or 30,000 of them. You don't want them coming back 3 months after manufacturing and saying, oh, it crashes when you do this. So I wrote software to actually beat up the software that I wrote. And what I would do is throw random garbage numbers at it and see how it performed.
Wow.
And that's how I tested game software as well as avionics software throughout my life. You just feed it information that a joystick would never provide, or a pitot, static pitot or pressure pitot in an aircraft, whatever provide, and see how it responds. That's how I would test it. I would sit there. I mean, again, I was obsessed. I would go 2 or 3 days without sleep sometimes because I just loved what I was doing so much, and I was trying to outwit myself to make sure that what I wrote was something that would be reliable. Wow,
that is impressive. That's fuzz testing like that's still kind of state of the art in some ways.
And a lot of times in the actual aircraft design, I would have 3 or 4 groups of people that would write software, and then nobody could talk to each other about what they did. And then I was the one that wrote the software that aggregated everything and voted the other software out if it made a mistake. So that's how I felt more comfortable about flight systems, is that in an aircraft usually, well, I think they still do that, but they have triplex systems where there's 3 computer systems. Mm-hmm. I wrote one of them, and my teams wrote the other 2. And then my computer voted out this is me, voted out the people that got the wrong answers so that we shut it down and then keep on flying the aircraft. So I really felt comfortable that with having people work for me, and if they didn't dot their I's and cross their T's like I did, then my computer got the final vote. So.
As a software developer, I don't think many of us, and maybe John, you'd agree, have the opportunity to write software in such a manner like that, right? We usually compartmentalize, do our own thing. We're not duplicating and triplicating our work amongst other people.
Sure.
So
certainly outside of, like you say, aviation or NASA or maybe the NSA.
Well, and as time's progressed in the last 20, 30 years, things are a lot more complicated than they were. So I don't think an individual, especially myself, could do something like that anymore. But when this all started, it was the flight control system. I mean, there's a primary flight display, what they call a multifunctions flight display, and there was an ICAS, which is an engine indicating crew alerting system display, and there was the FMS, flight management system display. And they were a little bit simpler, well, probably a lot simpler than what I've seen in the last 5 years. But you could write something like that yourself with a small group. Nowadays, I wouldn't even figure out how to do it. It may be age related, but I don't pay attention to it anymore. Sometimes it scares me what I did, but when I did it, I didn't scare at all.
When did you get your first color computer? What were the circumstances around that? Did you just get it because you were going to write games for it, or did you have one and you wrote games for it? How did that work out?
I remember at the time that I bought it, my little house was 1,200 square feet, and it was I think it was like $249.95 or something like that. And I bought it thinking in my mind that this is the last computer I'll ever have to buy because I'll make so much money doing this. And, it was that braggadocious stage where you think you can do anything. And then one thing led to another. And like I said, my friend that had managed a local Radio Shack in Tulsa asked me to write a video game. And I was already a 1609 programmer from my avionics background. So I wrote a game called Moonlander. That's the first one.
All right.
There was a Texas Instrument calculator that had a Moonlander program on it, and it was a numerical Moonlander. If your acceleration was too fast when you hit the ground, you exploded. So I took what I saw in this calculator and programmed it into a graphic game. And then they had me write Pac-Man, and then I wrote, Offender, which was a ripoff of Defender, the arcade game. And those 3 games is what Tandy saw, and they said, we want to write a game for us. I kept thinking, and back in those days, I think I made $16,000 a year. You have a house and house payment, insurance, and car payments, and so forth. So $238 for me was a stretch, or $250 was a stretch. But I bought it, plugged it in my television set, and sat there and started writing.
I appreciate you talking about the attention to detail and making sure your cartridge games were solid. You may not be aware, but several of us here, particularly in this group, actually are producing new cartridges for the CoCo. We have had at least one instance where we had found a bug after shipping.
That does happen. I will have to admit, I never had and Tandy never called me back about a bug of anything they ever sent out of I don't know how many cartridges I wrote, you guys may know, but I never had a bug in any of them. because of my obsessive compulsive disorder about writing software to beat up my software. I mean, it was one thing to write the game, which I enjoyed, but I enjoyed more writing software to beat up the game so that it didn't crash.
Wow.
Wow. Well, I was just going to mention that your cartridge design, which I assume is you're referring to the cartridge used in Predator and RoboCop.
Yeah.
And of course, that was documented in the Rainbow magazine I believe that's the June 1990 issue.
Yep, that's right.
Breaking the 32K barrier. I thought you might be amused to hear that, but as we were mentioning, or as I mentioned earlier, we're producing new cartridges, and I actually have a cartridge board design based on that design for the ROM bank switching, and then I've added on top of that an SN76489 sound chip so that you can have games that are larger and
with better audio, yeah.
With better audio. Still working on filling one up. I have a game that I've been working on for some time that I at least have on there using some music, and that'll be released at CoCo Fest. Anyway, I just thought you might be amused to hear that little bit of legacy of your design is living on.
Like I said, I always felt blessed, and when people like you guys keep it going, it makes me feel like I want to cry. I'm not kidding.
Oh man, that's cool.
A lot of times you get old, you go to the corner of the basement that your wife assigns you 3D print, and you just think nobody cares anymore. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, it's very great. It's very humbling to know that people still care.
You said you had source code for things like GFL Championship Football 2 and Typemate and so forth.
Yeah.
By this point, these are CoCo 3 games. Actually, I think Typemate was a CoCo 2/CoCo 3 game. It would work in either machine. Amazing World of Malcolm Martin was a CoCo 3 cartridge game. So we're talking about 87, 88 when you made these games. What was your development process like? You didn't have a modern PC where you're typing in assembly code and using a cross assembler. How were you doing the development? Were you doing it on a CoCo? Were you using OS9 to create cartridge games, or how did that look like?
I wrote it on a color computer, and I would use there's a company, I believe it was in Iowa, who did the OS9 for the color computer. I can almost remember the guy's name, Microware, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he looked like Harpo Marx to me. He was a very, very nice guy. Yeah, Ken Kaplan, that's him.
Yeah,
and I used his assembler and editor and assembler, which I liked because I was just so used to command line editors, and there was a couple of editors in the PC that you would cross assemble with, and they were Windows based, but they were pathetically slow, and I could out type them. So back in those days, that's what I used, the command line. But the modern editors, like I use a program now called Autodesk Fusion 360 to design 3D models with, and it's very fast, very efficient, so forth. So it can outrun me typing. Of course, I'm 63 now, so anybody can. But back then, I could. When I went to high school, this is an interesting story. I enrolled in advanced typing class because that's where all the girls were. Who knew it would end up letting me type so fast? So I typed so fast I could outrun most graphic systems. But back then, when I went to typing class, I just wanted dates. So it ended up I could program computers faster because I went to advanced typing class just because women were there.
So I think the moral of the story is that go where the women are and you'll be successful in life.
That's what I did. I'm not sure like anybody else, but that's what I did.
So you used the OS9 assembler to create these cartridge games.
Yes.
There was a time at which Tandy, I think maybe in 85 or so, Tandy mandated that all new software would run under OS9, at least disk-based software. A couple of disk-based titles that I know you wrote. You wrote Phantom Graph, which was a CoCo 3 graphics, OS9 Level 2 graphing package.
I remember that, yes.
And
it had to import somebody's. It had to import somebody's. I can't remember if it was Excel or maybe it was back then. I can't remember the spreadsheet program that was popular back then. It was a long time ago, before Excel maybe. But it had to import their graphic file or their spreadsheet.
Might have been Dynacalc.
That may have been it.
Which was the OS9 spreadsheet.
No, this had to import files from an IBM PC. I don't know why he wanted to do that.
Okay. All right. Okay, so
I had to import that file format, and it's long prior to Excel. There was somebody else, a small company, that was very upset when Microsoft took over the concept.
The other disk-based OS9 software that you wrote was something called Zone Runner.
Yes, and there was another one called, what was it, about creating humans and planets? Biosphere.
Biosphere. That's right.
That was a Mark Siegel. I mean, Phantom Graph, Biosphere, and Zone Runner were all concepts from Mark Siegel and his crew at Tandy.
So they fed you these ideas and said, "Hey, Greg, please, So it's not like, first of all, you were very prolific. You had a lot of titles.
Well, what happened, and this is from Mark Siegel, and he probably won't ever remember this, and I can barely remember it, but I thought it was funny. So he called me on a Friday, him and a gentleman named Srini Vasan. He was a program manager at Tandy. Very, very, very nice gentleman. I'd go down there and talk to him. I love both Mark and him. They were nice guys. They called me on a Friday and said, there's some new game on an IBM PC called Tetris, and we just got the license for it. Can you look at it and write it for us? I went down, back then, you don't go online, you went down to the local software store, and I did have a Tandy, I think it was a TRS 1000, that was an IBM PC style machine, so I bought Tetris, and I looked at it, and I wrote it, and this was on Friday night, so I wrote it Saturday, Sunday, I sent it via Procom modem on Monday, and they called me back Monday afternoon and said, you did the wrong game. And I thought, you guys are nuts. Come on, man. But then they did complain. They said, okay, we're just kidding you. They complained because I incorporated all of the Russian submarine and military stuff in it, and they didn't, in their game, they didn't want that stuff in it. They wanted I can't remember what they call the churches with the church spires, the Russian kind of Orthodox church. Something
sure.
Yeah. Those kind of things, things that were not so military in it. So I had to take I had to take the military stuff out of the game, and I just started, again, there's no internet back then, so I went to my encyclopedia, and I had a scanner. Back then, if you had a scanner on your computer, that was just like you were in nirvana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And those things were expensive. Nowadays, you do it all the time. But I had a scanner, and I'd scan those pictures in, I'd colorize them and put them in there and so forth. And by Wednesday, I Procom the game back to him again. It was done.
Wow.
So it took me 5 days to write Tetris.
Unbelievable.
Wow, that's amazing.
Maybe my memory is failing, but isn't CoCo Tetris one of those that's runs on both the CoCo 1 and 2 and the CoCo 3, and then on the CoCo 3 it actually uses the CoCo 3 graphics modes and such? So it's like a fat binary, two versions in one?
Yeah, you're testing my memory beyond what I can honestly answer. I do not recall that. I don't know.
I want to say that's true too.
Usually I try to, if Mark and Srini said cover all our machines, at that time I was writing so many games I kind of knew how to do it, but I don't remember the specifics anymore, so I couldn't actually guarantee that I remember.
Yeah. I'm looking at Curtis Boyle's game site, and it does show both sets of graphics in there. That's pretty impressive, especially on that compressed time schedule you're talking about.
Joke. Wow.
Well, again, I'm going to admit something else. Back then, I drank caffeinated coffee and I chain smoked cigarettes, and people always said to me, "Yeah, you let them burn in the ashtray." And I said, "No, that cigarette's right in my mouth, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, drinking coffee, and I'm just on the keyboard flying as fast as I can." Thanks to those girls in the advanced typing class.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I would have people call me, like on a Wednesday, and said, "You missed the party," and I said, "What party?" It was on Saturday night. I said, "Well, it's only Friday." He goes, "No, it's Wednesday." What?
Wow. You were a machine.
I love what I did. I just love what I did so much. I could go, 48 hours nonstop and not remember what time. I didn't even know if the sun rose, sunset, didn't know anything. I just loved it. It was great.
Awesome. Wow. So let me ask you, when Siegel was feeding you these ideas or whatever, was that like a one-on-one thing, or was he offering up these ideas to other people? Was there any competition there, or was it sort of?
I do not know. He would just call me on the phone and said, "Greg, I've got this design like Amazing World Amalgam Mortar, and I want you to do this, and the rest of it's up to you." So I'd start putting some concepts together, and again, does anybody remember modems?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
A 2400 baud modem. I'd modem the code down to the binary because it took too long to do anything else.
Of course, yeah.
And he would say, "No, I don't like this. Yes, I like this. No, I don't like this. This stinks. This is awful. This looks too much like you. Change this to make it look like something else," and that kind of stuff. And so I'd change it and send him something else. But I don't know if he actually. He had a wonderful group of programmers, and they all had. Steve Jork was one of them. There's another guy named Dan something. I can't remember his name.
There was Dale Lear.
Dale Lear, yes. And we all of us, a bunch of us met at the Tandy Center one year for lunch. And Mark was very upset because he thought if somebody blew up the place, all of his talented people would go away. There was, I guess, 10 of his favorite programmers down there. There were some very impressive people there.
You get to ride the subway?
Yes, I did ride the subway. And the Tandy Center, last time I was in Fort Worth was for a SolidWorks convention at the invitation of Ultimaker. And the Tandy Center is no longer there. It's gone. So
yeah.
I was very depressed. I don't remember or recall Mark being competitive like that. He knew what he wanted, and I think he asked people who he trusted with a design idea that he saw their skill or their format, and he liked like Steve Jork. He did a game, which is an arcade game. It was a pseudo 3D, an airplane flying over obstacles on the ground. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, beautiful work. Beautiful work. That's not the kind of stuff I could do. I don't know why. I'm a mathematic guy, and I can't do the pseudo 3D stuff. But it was gorgeous work, and when I saw him at Tandy, I said that is aside from Mario Brothers, that was my favorite game. The work he did on that, it was great. And I can't remember who did the skiing game for Tandy, but the first time I heard a computer talk, I thought, "Get ready, get set, go," and that's all it said. It's like when you see the thing I liked about working with Tandy is that you got a chance to see other people's work, and it always challenged you to be better, to do something better, different, beyond, so forth, so forth. So when I saw certain games like 3D skiing, I decided to do Flight Sim 1. And it wasn't the best thing in the world, but at a megahertz, color computer, you kind of do the best you can with what you have to work with.
I want to talk just a little bit about what you're doing now with the 3D printing. Fascinating stuff. Sure. You've got a great YouTube channel. You like to tinker, but what got you specifically into 3D printing, and what's some of the tools that you use for that?
I loved all the time I was doing computer and electronics design, computer system design, and software design. I worked with mechanical engineering people, and I loved gears. I don't know why. I love gears. I love mechanisms and so forth. So when I had spare time, I would buy like CNC lathes or CNC machines, but I never had time to use them. So I ended up with a garage full of equipment, and when I finally retired at 50, I started using it. And that's when I discovered how tough it was to machine stuff. I really admire mechanical people who machine stuff. It took so long, and it was like you had to spend 100% of your time watching a gear getting knurled, because if you didn't, it would break and something go wrong, you have to start all over again. And I think my wife and I were in Florida one year, and I saw this on some tech channel, a 3D printer from MakerBot. And I looked at it and read about it, and I told my wife I want to buy one of these things. And that same year, a hurricane went through New Jersey and tore up the place. So it took me like 9 months to get my first printer. But when I got it, I was just enthralled with it, because I can make, you can't make, obviously, gears that run 10,000 RPM, but you can print 3D gears, you can do all kinds of stuff in minutes,
right,
as opposed to machining something in a day. That's how I started using it. The first CAD program I used to 3D print was a program called SketchUp. And it wasn't a true solid modeling tool. So when you designed a solid model, you had, hours of cleanup to do after it was designed. And about 3 years after that, Autodesk offered me a free copy of Fusion 360. And I took it. And for the first 3 or 4 weeks, I'd be down in the basement. I'd come upstairs and scream at my wife, "This is the worst program I've ever used in my life. It's too hard. It's too difficult." But after about 4 or 5 weeks, I thought, oh, now I know how to do that. So I use Autodesk Fusion 360 exclusively now for solid modeling on anything I design. And I still design, they're not as sophisticated as what I used to do, but I have avionics companies and so forth ask me to design, the no smoking passenger seatbelt with a no smoking anymore. But I actually did a no smoking sign. I'm not sure who it was for. Now think about it, because that had to be in some foreign country. But the signs that they plug into the panels inside the aircraft, so they tell you not passenger seatbelt, turbulence, and so forth. Right. I've designed some of those things, but most of the stuff I design is just mechanical things that I always wanted to do, but I just didn't ever have the time to do them before. And 3D printing is so fast compared to machining that it's like the old days. The toughest thing for me to do was get something out of my brain and into the computer, because my fingers weren't fast enough. And 3D printing kind of solves that problem, because getting something out of my brain to a CNC machine to mill in aluminum just drove me crazy because it took so long. And a 3D printer is the fastest thing in the world, but it's a lot faster than machining. So,
when the CoCo 3 came out, did you jump on that right away? Because you did release some really nice CoCo 3 games that I certainly enjoyed.
If I believe I remember this correctly, I'm going to say I'm positive that Tandy sent me a Color Computer 3.
Oh, that's awesome.
Immediately, long before it came out. And I think this story is so confusing on mine anymore. I could swear they sent me a Color Computer 4, which has been a raging debate, because I wrote something in the DOS ROM for them. I wrote some stuff in the DOS ROM for it. Boys, did I send you the source code for that?
You found something, and you sent me a picture, say, hey, would you be interested in that? It was a printout, and it had CoCo 4 ROM at the title of the printout. It was like a dot matrix printout. It was a long listing, right? And I didn't see anything CoCo 4 specific. It looked to me like it was the CoCo 3 ROM source code, and maybe you were going to start that as a basis for the CoCo 4 ROM, but there was nothing in the source code that I saw that was, hey, this is a new feature of the CoCo 4. Does that make sense?
It does, because I think I thought it's a vague memory. I can almost guarantee, I would almost say 99%, 63 years old, that's like 20%, but anyway, that I talked with Tandy about a Color Computer 4 ROM update, or making the ROM for the Color Computer 4. And it was something to do with Microsoft code, because I think Microsoft wrote their basic ROM, and I had to put some hooks in it for something. For some reason, I was doing a ROM update, and my brain keeps telling me it was a Color Computer 4, and the printout said Color Computer 4.
Greg, before we contacted you here, how much did you know about retro computers and what people do with them? And were you aware of the scene, the hobby, or?
Maybe 0.1%. I did not realize that color computer people. I mean, I talked to Boise, but I just didn't realize when somebody sent me an email about CoCo convention, after a CoCo convention, you want to do something. CoCo convention still?
Yeah.
Chicago.
Now that you know there is a world of us out here, crazy folks. I wonder if there's any kind
crazy. You're doing wonderful work. You really are, and it keeps. If it keeps people thinking and dreaming, it's
yeah, it does.
It's wonderful work. It's all I try to do anymore. I mean, I don't make if you go to my YouTube channel, you don't pay for a single video. There's no advertisements and so forth. I don't what do I call it, monetize anywhere. It's all for free. And I just want people to, if I have anything in my mind left that somebody could learn something through, I wanted to get it out there so somebody can do it. And you guys are doing the exact same thing.
We really enjoyed having you, Greg. I really appreciate you coming on the show with us and talking to us.
Well, thank you so very much for the invitation. I'm truly honored. I'm very honored that you guys came back around.
Well, I think you earned it.
Hey, what's put a smile on your face this morning?
Oh, it's my Fred.
Fred? From accounting?
No, you idiot. Fred, F-R-E-H-D. It's a hard drive emulator for the TRS-80. It emulates the original Tandy hard disk drive, but stores everything on an SD card.
Oh, I see.
I ran programs that I hadn't touched in years because running them from floppy disk was just so painful.
More painful than Fred from accounting?
Shut up.
For information and pricing, contact Ian Maverick via email, ianm@trs-80.com.
This is the CoCo Crew Podcast Network.
This is it, gang. The greatest Radio Shack value ever offered. The new TRS-80 color computer, featuring 4K to 16K of memory, 53-key keyboard, 16 lines of 32 uppercase characters, connectors for two two-dimensional joysticks with push-button switch on each, RS-232 serial I/O port, 1500 baud cassette port. To get yours, buy a box of Gimme Crisp cereal, then, with your name and address, send $400 in coin at a Gimme Crisp box top to Color Computer, Box 812, St. Louis, Missouri. If you don't agree that the TRS-80 color computer is tops, return it. We'll return your money. That's Color Computer, Box 812, St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 47. Woohoo! The last recording until CoCo Fest, the CoCo New Year. To me, it still seems like 2018 until CoCo Fest has taken place. Alright, on this episode, I'm going to talk about a game that I've completely ignored all of these years, and perhaps you may have as well. This game is called Mind Roll. It was released on ROM cartridge in 1988 and sold in Radio Shack stores across the nation. I've got a copy, you have a copy, your parents probably have a copy, but the big question is, have any of you actually played your copy of it? Well, I'm guilty for letting this one sit on my shelf until now. Mine Roll was released on other platforms such as PC and Amiga, but it was originally released under the name Quedex. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's spelled Quedex. Quedex for the Commodore 64 by Thalamus Software in 1987. However, in 1988, it was re-released in America under the name Mine Roll by the software publisher Epix for the Amiga and PC, and, of course, our beloved CoCo. The CoCo version is coded by a fellow named Jesse Taylor. One super cool thing about this game is that it's released on a fat binary cartridge, meaning it contains both CoCo 1 and 2 and CoCo 3 specific versions. When you insert the cartridge into your color computer, it will auto-detect what CoCo platform you are using and load the appropriate version. This game requires either a color computer 1 or 2 with 64K or a color computer 3 with 128K. It supports keyboard and joystick. It also supports composite or RGB monitor type when playing on the CoCo 3. Mine Roll is really quite fun, and a shame I ignored it all these years. But hey, it gives me something old but new to play now. The object of the game is simple. There are a total of 10 planes in which you must solve before the time limit expires. By solving the plane, you need to find the square marked goal. This is usually the one you have to land on to complete the plane. You steer an 8-ball around on each of these planes, and on most levels you can also jump. Along with trying to beat the clock, you must watch out for a lot of obstacles on your path, such as deadly shapes, bonus shapes, invisible walls, pools of acid, one-way pipes, and more. The nice thing about this game is that you can start on any plane you wish. When the game first loads, it asks you what plane you'd like to select, so you don't have to play them in any order. The graphics are really nice on this game, including the CoCo 1 and 2 version. The scrolling is also super smooth. I highly recommend you checking out this game. If you don't have the physical ROM cartridge, there is a disc version of it on the CoCo Archive website. That can at least whet your appetite until you find the original ROM cartridge for your collection. Well, until next month, or I should say next CoCo New Year, happy CoCo gaming and retro forever.
The Call of the Heron. To the Iroquois, seeing a heron before the hunt was an omen of good luck. In Egypt, the heron is honored as the creator of light, as a symbol of prosperity. In China, the heron represents strength, purity, patience, and long life. To the CoCo Fest attendee, the heron is the statue at Heron Point Conference Center in Lombard, Illinois, where CoCo Fest is held. Be a part of a CoCo Fest tradition. Be sure to touch the heron at CoCo Fest in Lombard, Illinois.
Well, we have reached the end of episode 47. Hopefully a lot of you are listening to this episode while you're making the trek to CoCo Fest. As usual, I'd like to thank our host, John Linville, for procuring all the news articles each month and providing us educational tech segments. Also like to thank Mike Rowan, or Myro, for editing and making those amazing commercials you hear each month on here. Can't forget to thank Boise Pete and Ron Klein for being a part of the show. A huge thanks goes out to Greg Zumwalt for giving us some of your time to record that awesome interview with you. I really enjoyed that one, and I'm looking forward to meeting you at CoCo Fest. Last but not least, we'd like to thank all of you who listen and support us each month. Keep your feedback rolling in. We really do like to hear from you. Well, it's time for me to get going. I have to finish up some last-minute projects for CoCo Fest. And speaking of CoCo Fest, I hope to see all of you there. Until next CoCo New Year, happy CoCoing and retro forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo. 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 CoCo.
like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway? It's a blast from the past.